She thought about her father. About how he'd always said that people were basically good if you gave them a chance to be. She'd stopped believing that after he died, after the world had taken everything from them and left them with nothing but each other in desperation. Maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe Dad had been right all along. Jenny brought hot chocolate and told them to look at the menu. Rachel's hands shook as she opened it, seeing all the food they couldn't afford yesterday, that they could eat today. Katie ordered pancakes and eggs and bacon. Rachel ordered the same. When the food came, they ate like they hadn't in weeks, because they hadn't. Not like this. Not real food, hot and fresh and plentiful. They were halfway through their meal when the door chimed and Rachel looked up to see Bear walking in, another woman beside him. She was pretty, maybe in her early 40s, with brown hair pulled back and flour dust on her jeans. Bear spotted them and headed over, the woman following. They slid into the booth, Bear next to Rachel, the woman next to Katie. "This is my wife, Beth," Bear said. "She owns a bakery downtown. We've been talking, and we've got some ideas about how to help you girls out. But first, I need to know your whole story. All of it. Can you do that?" Rachel looked at Katie, then at Bear, then at Beth's warm, open face. She took a breath and started talking. She told them everything. About Dad's cancer. About the medical bills. About dropping out of school to take care of him. About the house being sold, the account being drained, the funeral that took the last of their money. About the car breaking down yesterday and spending last night frozen in a parking lot, wondering if they'd make it to morning. By the time she finished, Beth had tears in her eyes. Bear's expression had gone hard, but not with anger at them. Anger for them. Anger at a system that had failed two girls who'd done nothing wrong except have bad luck and a sick father. "Okay," Bear said when Rachel finally stopped talking. "Here's what's going to happen. I've got a friend who owns a motel down the street. Clean place, safe place. You two are going to stay there tonight, and I'm paying for it. Tomorrow, Beth's going to pick you up, and we're going to take you to social services. We're going to get you into the system properly, get you the help you're entitled to. We're also going to see about getting Katie enrolled in school. And Rachel, if you want it, Beth's got a job opening at her bakery. Starting wage is $15 an hour, and you can begin on Monday." Rachel couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up entirely. Beth reached across the table and took her hand. "You don't have to do this alone anymore. I know what it's like to have nothing and nobody. I know what it's like to think the whole world has turned its back on you. But you've got people now. You've got us. And we don't abandon family." "But we're not your family," Katie said softly. Bear looked at her, and his gray eyes were fierce and gentle at the same time. "You are now, kiddo. That's how the Freedom Riders work. We take care of our own, and as of about an hour ago, you two became ours. So get used to it." Rachel broke then. She put her face in her hands and sobbed, not from sadness but from relief so profound it hurt. Katie cried too, and Beth got up and moved to their side of the booth, wrapping both girls in her arms while they fell apart and put themselves back together in the space of a few minutes. When Rachel could finally breathe again, she looked at Bear through blurry eyes. "Why?" she asked one more time. "Why are you doing this?" Bear was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "My daughter would have been about your age if she'd lived. Car accident took her when she was 12. After that, my wife and we nearly fell apart. We had everything, and then we had nothing that mattered. It took us years to figure out that the only way to heal that kind of hole is to fill it with purpose, with helping people who need it. So that's what we do. The whole club, we all have our reasons, our stories. But we all decided a long time ago that we'd use what we have to help people who have nothing. Because somebody has to. And today, that somebody is us, and those people are you." Rachel understood then. This wasn't random kindness. This was intentional. This was chosen. This was a whole community of people who had decided to be the light in someone else's darkness. And today, that light had found the Morrison sisters. "I'm going to pay it forward," Rachel said, her voice steady now. "Someday, when I'm back on my feet, I'm going to help someone the way you're helping me. I promise." Bear smiled, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I know you will. I can see it in you. You've got that fighter's spirit. You just needed somebody to believe in you long enough for you to remember how to believe in yourself. They finished their meal together. Bear told them stories about the Freedom Riders, about the charity work they did, about the families they'd helped over the years. Beth talked about her bakery and the community of women who worked there, many of whom had been in tough situations before finding their way to her door. Katie slowly relaxed, the tension draining from her shoulders as she listened to these strangers who had become something more. When they finally left the diner, full and warm and no longer alone, Bear walked them to the motel he'd mentioned. He'd already paid for a week in advance. The room was small but clean, with 2 beds and a heater that worked and a bathroom with hot water. To Rachel, it looked like a palace. At the door, Bear turned to face them both. "Tomorrow, things start getting better," he said. "Tonight, you rest. You're safe. You're warm. You're fed. And tomorrow, we build on that. One day at a time. One step at a time. Until you're not just surviving anymore. Until you're living again. Deal?" "Deal," Rachel said, and Katie echoed her. They watched from the window as Bear got on his motorcycle and rode away, the engine rumbling into the night. Rachel thought about that moment in the parking lot, when she'd gathered every ounce of courage she had left to ask a stranger for help. She'd expected rejection. She'd expected cruelty, or at best indifference. She'd gotten a miracle instead. Katie climbed into one of the beds, already half asleep. Rachel sat on the edge of the other, the $200 still in her pocket, a bakery job waiting for Monday, and a group of bikers who had looked at 2 desperate girls and decided to care. She thought about her father again, about his faith in people, about his belief that kindness was never wasted and that hope was never foolish. He'd been right. Even in the darkest moment, even when everything had fallen apart, there had been someone willing to help. Someone willing to see them. Someone willing to care. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There was still Katie's school to figure out, still their long-term housing situation to solve, still 100 problems that wouldn't magically disappear because of one act of kindness. But tonight, for the first time in 3 weeks, Rachel felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. And it had come in the form of a big biker with gray eyes and a generous heart who had looked at a desperate girl asking for spare change and given her so much more. He'd given her a future. Rachel woke to sunlight streaming through thin motel curtains and forgot, for just one perfect second, where she was and why. Then reality settled back in, but it was a different reality than yesterday. Today she woke in a warm bed with a full stomach and $200 in her pocket. Today she woke with hope. Katie was still sleeping, curled under the covers, her face peaceful in a way Rachel hadn't seen in weeks. The cough that had worried Rachel yesterday seemed better already. Sometimes all a body needed was warmth and food and safety to start healing itself. Rachel's phone, plugged in and charging for the first time in 3 days, showed 10:30 in the morning. She had 4 missed calls and 3 text messages, all from unknown numbers. Her chest tightened with old anxiety before she remembered yesterday, remembered Bear, remembered that not everything unknown was a threat anymore. The first text read, "This is Bear. Hope you girls slept well. Beth will pick you up at noon. Be ready. We have a busy day ahead." The second was from a number labeled Beth Harrison. "Good morning, Rachel. I'm bringing you both some clothes from my daughter's closet. She's in college now and left a ton of stuff behind. Should fit you both. See you at noon." The third text was from Susan Clark, Social Services. "Hi Rachel. Bear Harrison contacted me about your situation. I've cleared my afternoon to meet with you. We're going to get you girls enrolled in the help you need. Don't worry, this is the good kind of social services call. See you at 2. Rachel read the messages 3 times, making sure they were real. Yesterday she'd been invisible to the system. Today the system was reaching out to her. All because one man had decided to care. She got up quietly and looked out the window. The motel faced a busy street in southeast Portland. She could see a coffee shop, a thrift store, a small grocery market. Normal neighborhood things. Places where normal people did normal life things. Maybe, soon, she and Katie could be those normal people again. Katie stirred and opened her eyes. "Did I dream yesterday?" "No," Rachel said, sitting on the edge of her sister's bed. "It was real. All of it. So we really met a biker gang who wants to help us." Motorcycle club, Rachel corrected, remembering how Bear had gently explained the difference last night. And yay, we really did. Katie sat up, her expression still caught between disbelief and wonder. What happens now? Now we get ready. Beth is picking us up at noon to take us to social services. And Bay said we have a busy day. They showered for the first time in days, standing under hot water until the motel's cheap shampoo was gone and their skin turned pink from scrubbing. Rachel washed their clothes in the sink with hand soap and hung them to dry on the shower rod. They weren't clean, not really, but they were cleaner. Better than nothing until Beth arrived with those promised clothes. At 11:45, Rachel's phone buzzed with a call. Beth's name showed on the screen. "I'm in the parking lot," Beth said when Rachel answered. "Blue Honda Civic. Come on out when you're ready." Beth met them at the car with 2 large shopping bags. She'd parked right in front of their room, a thoughtful gesture that meant they didn't have to carry things far. She looked younger in daylight, wearing jeans and a green sweater, her brown hair down around her shoulders. "I wasn't sure what sizes you needed, so I grabbed a bunch of different options," Beth said, handing over the bags. "Take what fits and don't worry about the rest. My daughter, Hannah, she's got more clothes than she knows what to do with. She'd want you to have these." Back in the room, Rachel and Katie went through the bags like it was Christmas morning. Jeans that actually fit. T-shirts in bright colors. A red hoodie for Rachel. A blue jacket for Katie. Socks and underwear still in packages, brand new. Shoes that were only slightly worn and in the right sizes. How did she know our sizes? Katie whispered, holding up a pair of jeans that looked exactly right. "Bear probably asked yesterday," Rachel guessed. "He seems like someone who pays attention." When they emerged from the room 15 minutes later, dressed in clean clothes that fit, Beth's eyes went soft. "You girls look wonderful. Come on. We have appointments to keep." The social services office was downtown in a gray building that usually filled Rachel with dread. Government places meant paperwork and rejection and people who looked at you like you were a problem to be managed. But today, Susan Clark met them in the lobby with a warm smile and a folder full of papers already prepared. "Rachel, Katie, come with me," Susan said. "We're going to get you set up with everything you need." Beth came with them, sitting beside Rachel as Susan explained the process. Emergency food assistance, medical coverage, a caseworker assigned specifically to their situation, programs for Katie's schooling, resources for young adults aging out of care, which technically applied to Rachel even though she'd never been in foster care. "The system failed you," Susan said bluntly. "When your father died, someone should have caught you before you fell through the cracks. But you're here now, and we're going to make this right." "Bear called you," Rachel said. "It wasn't a question." Susan smiled. "He did. Called my personal cell at 8 this morning and told me about 2 girls who needed help immediately. Bear and I go way back. He's helped me with a dozen cases over the years. When he calls, I listen." The paperwork took 2 hours. Rachel signed forms until her hand cramped. Katie sat through an interview about her education and needs. Beth made phone calls from the hallway, arranging things Rachel didn't yet understand. When they finally finished, Rachel had a folder full of resources, 3 appointments scheduled for next week, and a promise that someone was now watching out for them. "What about school for Katie?" Rachel asked as they prepared to leave. "Already handled," Susan said. "Beth's been working on that. She'll explain." In the car, Beth drove east toward a neighborhood Rachel didn't know. "I called the principal at Wilson High while you were with Susan. It's a good school, about 2 miles from the bakery. Katie, you start on Monday. I've got you enrolled and registered. The school counselor knows your situation and will help you catch up on anything you missed." Katie, sitting in the back seat, made a small noise. "I haven't been to school in almost a month. Since Dad got really sick." "I know, sweetie. But you're going back now. And you're going to be okay." Beth glanced at Rachel. "We're not done for the day. Next stop is housing." "Housing?" Rachel's voice cracked. "But we just got the motel room." "The motel room is temporary. We need something better." Beth pulled up in front of a small apartment complex. "A friend of mine manages this building. She's got a 1-bedroom unit opening up next week. I wanted you to see it." The apartment was small but clean. One bedroom with space for 2 beds. A kitchen with appliances that worked. A bathroom with a tub. A living room with windows that let in light. It was more than Rachel had dared to dream about. "I can't afford this," Rachel said, her throat tight. "Even with the job at your bakery, I can't afford rent here." "The first 3 months are covered," Beth said. "After that, with your job at the bakery and the assistant Susan is setting up, you'll be able to manage it. But you need time to get on your feet first. So the Freedom Riders are covering your rent until you can take over. That's what we do." Rachel sat down on the floor of the empty apartment and put her head in her hands. "I don't understand why you're all doing this. I'm a stranger. You don't owe me anything." Beth sat beside her, and Katie joined them, the 3 of them on the floor of this empty apartment that was about to become home. "Let me tell you a story," Beth said. 15 years ago, I was where you are now. Different circumstances but same desperation. I had nothing. I was living in my car with my daughter, who was 2 years old. I was working 3 part-time jobs and still couldn't get ahead. Then I met Bear." She paused, looking out the window. He was part of the Freedom Riders even then, though he wasn't president yet. They were doing a charity event at the diner where I worked. Bear saw me putting food in a bag to take home, saw me asking the cook if I could have the leftovers that would otherwise get thrown out. He didn't say anything that day, but the next day he came back with the whole club. They'd taken up a collection. $2,000. They gave it to me and told me to use it to get stable. Katie leaned against Beth's shoulder. "What did you do?" "I cried for about an hour," Beth said with a soft laugh. "Then I used that money to get an apartment and put a deposit on a commercial kitchen space. I started my bakery with equipment bought from restaurant auctions and determination I didn't even know I had. The Freedom Riders were my first regular customers. They spread the word. And slowly, over time, I built something real. Something good." She looked at Rachel. "Now I get to pay that forward." "We all do. That's the deal with the Freedom Riders. You receive help, and when you're back on your feet, you help someone else. It's a circle, and you're part of it now." "I want to be part of it," Rachel said. "I want to help others like you've helped me." "You will," Beth promised. "But first, let's get you stable. Come on. We still have one more stop." They drove to a large warehouse on the outskirts of Portland. The sign read Freedom Riders MC Clubhouse. Beth parked and led them inside, where the space opened into a huge room with motorcycles along one wall, tables and chairs scattered throughout, and photos covering every available surface. A dozen people were there, some in leather vests, some in regular clothes. They looked up when Beth entered, and their faces broke into smiles. Bear stood from a table in the back and walked over. "Girls, welcome to our clubhouse," he said. "We're having an informal meeting, and we wanted you to be here for it." Rachel and Katie followed him to the table where 5 other people sat today. Wrench was there, along with the other bikers from yesterday. But there were also new faces. A woman with short gray hair and kind eyes. A young man in a Navy uniform. An older couple who looked like they could be anyone's grandparents. "Everyone, this is Rachel and Katie Morrison," Bear said. "They're the reason we're here today. Rachel, Katie, this is the core group of the Freedom Riders family. Some of us ride bikes, some of us don't, but we all believe in the same thing, taking care of people who need it." The woman with gray hair stood and came around the table. "I'm Linda. I run the community outreach program for the club. I heard about your situation, and I want you to know we're all behind you." The young man in uniform nodded. "I'm Chris. I just got back from deployment last month. The Freedom Riders took care of my mom while I was overseas and couldn't be here. Now I volunteer with them whenever I'm home." The older couple smiled warmly. "We're George and Martha," the man said. "We've been with this club for 20 years. Watched it grow from 10 people to over 100. We've seen a lot of families helped, and we're glad to help yours." Bear gestured for everyone to sit. "We wanted to bring you here today because we want you to understand something important. What's happening for you isn't charity. It's community. It's family. We don't help you and then disappear. We're here for the long run. All of us." Wrench spoke up from the end of the table. I took a look at your car this morning. The engine's done. Not worth fixing. But I've got a buddy who owes me a favor. He runs a used car lot. He's got a Honda that runs good, inspection's current, and he'll let it go for $1,000. The club's buying it for you. Rachel felt like the floor had dropped out beneath her. You're buying us a car. You need transportation, Wrench said simply. Katie needs to get to school. You need to get to work. The bus system here is decent, but a car makes life easier. So yeah, we're buying you a car. But the money, Rachel started. All this money you're spending on us. The rent, the car, the food. It's thousands of dollars. Linda leaned forward. Rachel, listen to me carefully. This club raises over $100,000 a year through charity rides, fundraisers, and donations. Every cent of it goes to helping families in crisis. That's our mission. That's our purpose. Right now, you're our mission. Let us do what we do. Katie wiped tears from her cheeks. I don't know how to thank you all. You don't have to thank us, Martha said gently. You just have to accept the help. That's all we ask. Let us help you. Bear pulled out a piece of paper and slid it across the table to Rachel. This is a schedule. Your schedule for the next 2 weeks. Monday you start at the bakery at 6 in the morning. Beth will pick you up the first week until you get your car. Katie starts school Monday at 8. We've arranged for her to ride with Chris, who lives near your motel and passes right by Wilson High on his way to the base. He pointed to different lines on the schedule. Wednesday you have an appointment with a financial counselor who volunteers with us. She's going to help you understand the debt situation from your father's death and figure out if any of it can be disputed or reduced. Thursday you move into your apartment. We'll be there to help. Saturday we're having a community barbecue here at the clubhouse. You're both invited, and we'd like you to come meet more of the extended family. Rachel stared at the schedule, at the careful planning these strangers had done for her life. You've thought of everything. We've been doing this a long time, Beth said. We know what people need when they are starting over. Structure helps. Knowing what's coming next helps. So we made you a plan. You can adjust it as you need to, but at least you've got a framework. George cleared his throat. There's one more thing. Bear mentioned that your father's life insurance disappeared into medical debt. I used to work in insurance claims. If you give me the information, I'll look into it. Sometimes money gets lost in the system, especially when someone dies and there's no one watching out for the estate. Might be worth investigating. I have all Dad's papers in a box, Rachel said. It's in our old car at Wrench's shop. I'll get it, Wrench said. Bring it to you tomorrow. They spent the next hour going over details. Beth explained the bakery job, what Rachel would be doing, what the hours were like. Linda talked about support groups for young people dealing with grief and loss. Chris offered to teach Katie some self-defense basics, saying every young woman should know how to protect herself. George and Martha invited them both to Sunday dinner next week at their house, along with several other families the club was helping. When they finally left the clubhouse, the sun was setting over Portland. Beth drove them back to the motel, but the building looked different now. It wasn't a last resort. It was a temporary stop on the way to something better. Everything looked different, actually. The whole world had shifted in 24 hours. At the motel room door, Beth hugged them both. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow I'm bringing you groceries so you can make your own meals instead of eating out. Sunday is yours to do whatever you want. Monday, your new life really begins. Are you ready? I think so, Rachel said. I'm scared, but I'm ready. Fear is normal, Beth said. You've been through something horrible, and it's going to take time to heal from it. But you don't have to heal alone. We're with you now. After Beth left, Rachel and Katie sat on their beds and looked at each other. Less than 30 hours ago, they'd been sleeping in a frozen car with no hope and no options. Now they had an apartment waiting, jobs and school arranged, a car being purchased, and an entire community rallying around them. This is crazy, Katie said softly. I know. Do you think it's real? Like, really real? They are not going to change their minds. Rachel thought about Bear's eyes when he'd looked at them. About Beth's story of her own desperation. about the careful planning and the genuine care she'd seen all day. Yeah, Katie. I think it's really real. I think we found people who actually care. Katie climbed into Rachel's bed and curled against her sister like she used to when she was small and scared. I miss Dad. Me too. But I think he'd be happy we found these people. He always said there was good in the world if you look for it. Rachel stroked her sister's hair, thinking about their father, about his faith and his kindness and his belief that people were fundamentally good. He'd been right. Even in their darkest hour, goodness had found them. Or maybe they'd found it when Rachel had gathered her courage and asked a stranger for help. Yeah, Rachel said. I think Dad would be really happy about this. They fell asleep like that, sister holding sister, safe and warm and no longer alone. Outside, the city moved through its Saturday night rhythms. People went to dinners and movies and bars. They lived their normal lives with their normal problems. And in a small motel room, two girls who'd lost everything began to remember what it felt like to have something again. Sunday morning came with rain. Rachel woke to her phone ringing and fumbled for it in the dark. Beth's name showed on the screen, and for a moment, Rachel's heart clenched with fear. This was when they'd tell her it was all a mistake. This was when the help would stop. Morning, Beth's cheerful voice said. Sorry to call early. Bear and I are at the grocery store, and I want to make sure I get things you'll actually eat. Any allergies or foods you hate? The relief made Rachel laugh. No allergies. We eat pretty much anything. Perfect. We'll be there in about an hour with supplies. Also, Wrench texted. He's got your car ready to look through. He'll bring the box of your dad's papers by this afternoon. Oh, and the car from his buddy's lot? It'll be ready Tuesday. Wrench is doing a full safety check on it first. Beth, Rachel said, her voice catching. Thank you. For everything. Oh honey, we're just getting started. See you soon. An hour later, Beth and Bear arrived with enough groceries to fill the tiny motel kitchenette. Bread, peanut butter, cereal, milk, fruit, sandwich meat, cheese, pasta, sauce. Simple food, but plenty of it. Food they could prepare themselves without having to go to restaurants or rely on the generosity of strangers for every meal. This should hold you until you move into the apartment Thursday, Bear said, putting the last bag on the counter. Beth and I are going to head out. Let you girls have a quiet day. Tomorrow's a big day with work and school starting. Rest up. But before they could leave, Wrench arrived with the box from the car. It was small, just a plastic container with papers stuffed inside. Rachel's entire family history reduced to one box. Birth certificates. Her father's death certificate. Hospital bills. Collection notices. And somewhere in there, supposedly, information about the life insurance policy that had vanished. George showed up 20 minutes later, true to his word. He sat at the small motel table with Rachel, while Katie watched TV on one of the beds. Bear and Beth stayed, and Wrench pulled up a chair. This was how the Freedom Riders worked, Rachel was learning. Nobody did anything alone. George went through the papers methodically, making notes on a legal pad. He'd brought reading glasses and a calculator. Every few minutes he'd pause, frown, make another note. The process took over an hour. Finally, he sat back and looked at Rachel. Okay, I found something. Your father had a life insurance policy through his employer for $50,000. The beneficiaries were listed as you and Katie, 50-50 split. According to these hospital bills, someone filed a claim against that policy for medical expenses. But here's the thing. Life insurance doesn't work that way. Medical creditors can't touch life insurance proceeds unless there's no estate and they file specific claims through probate court. I don't understand, Rachel said. The hospital told me the insurance money went to pay the bills. The hospital was either mistaken or someone filed incorrectly, George said. Did you ever get any official notification about the insurance claim? Rachel shook her head. Everything was so crazy after Dad died. I was just trying to pay for the funeral and figure out where Katie and I were going to live. The hospital kept calling saying we owed money, and then someone told me the insurance had covered it. I thought that meant it was done. George tapped his pen on the table. I think someone at the insurance company processed this wrong. The money should have come directly to you and Katie as beneficiaries. Medical debt would have had to be handled separately through the estate. But if there was no formal estate opened, which it looks like there wasn't, then those medical bills would have just remained unpaid. The insurance money should have gone to you. So where is it? Bay asked. That's what I'm going to find out, George said. I'll start making calls tomorrow. I still have contacts in the insurance industry. We're going to track down that $50,000. If it's sitting in an account somewhere waiting for proper beneficiary claims, we'll get it released. If it was improperly paid out, we might be able to challenge that and get it back. Rachel felt dizzy. $50,000. That was enough to change everything. But what if it's really gone? What if they did pay it to the hospital and we can't get it back? Then we fight, George said simply. But my gut says it's not gone. My gut says it's just lost in bureaucracy somewhere. Give me a week to investigate. After George left, taking the box of papers with him, Rachel sat stunned. Bear put a hand on her shoulder. Don't get your hopes up too high yet. George is good at what he does, but sometimes money is just gone. Either way, you're going to be okay. You've got a job, an apartment, and support. The insurance money would be wonderful, but it's not your only chance at a future. Understand? Rachel nodded. I understand. It's just hard to believe that something else might actually go right, you know. I know, Bear said. You've been conditioned to expect the worst. But sometimes good things happen too. Sometimes people help. Sometimes the system works. You're learning that now. The rest of Sunday passed quietly. Katie did homework, catching up on the month of school she'd missed. Rachel organized the small space they occupied, putting their new clothes away, arranging the food Beth had brought. Normal domestic things that felt extraordinary after weeks of chaos. That evening, Rachel's phone buzzed with a text from a number she didn't recognize. Hi Rachel, this is Jenny from the diner. Bear gave me your number. I wanted to let you know that if Katie ever needs a weekend job, I've got hours available. No pressure, just wanted you to know the option is there. Another text came from Linda. Thinking of you girls. Remember that support group meets Thursday evenings at the clubhouse. No obligation, but it's there if you want it. Other young people dealing with loss and hardship. You might find it helpful. Then Beth. Don't stress about tomorrow. You're going to do great at the bakery. See you at 5:30 for pickup. Rachel showed the messages to Katie. They are all checking on us, making sure we know we're not alone. It's weird, Katie said. But good weird. Like having a family again, kind of. Just a really big family full of people we just met. That night, Rachel lay in bed thinking about the next day. Her first day of work. Katie's first day back at school. The beginning of their new normal. She was nervous, but underneath the nerves was something else. Something she'd almost forgotten existed. Excitement. Hope. The belief that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. She thought about that moment in the gas station parking lot. Asking Bear for spare change. Expecting nothing. Receiving everything. How one moment of courage, one desperate plea for help, had completely changed their trajectory. How asking had opened a door to a whole community of people who had been waiting for someone to help. Rachel pulled out her phone and typed a text to Bear. Thank you for seeing us. Thank you for caring. I don't have the words for what you've given us, but I promise I'll pay it forward someday. His response came quickly. You don't owe me anything but one promise. Promise me you'll let us help you all the way through this, not just partway. Promise me you won't disappear or push us away when things get hard or when you start feeling like you're a burden. Promise me you'll stay connected to this family we're building together. Rachel typed back immediately. I promise. Good. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day. Beth will be there at 5:30 sharp. She's always early. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because you won't believe what happens when Rachel discovers her hidden talent at the bakery and Katie makes an unexpected friend at school. Things are about to get even more interesting for the Morrison sisters. Rachel set her alarm for 4:30 and closed her eyes. Tomorrow they stopped being victims of circumstance. Tomorrow they started being something new. Survivors. Fighters. Members of a community that had chosen to care. And maybe, someday, they'd be the ones doing the helping. the ones seeing desperate strangers and deciding to change their lives. But tonight, there were two girls in a warm room with food in the kitchen and people who cared about what happened to them. Tonight, they were safe. And that was more than enough. The alarm shrieked at 4:30, pulling Rachel from dreams of her father. In the dream, he'd been healthy, smiling, telling her she'd done good taking care of Katie. She woke with tears on her face and the ache of missing him so sharp it hurt to breathe. But underneath the grief was something new. Purpose. People were depending on her to show up today. Beth was coming at 5:30. There was work to do. Katie stirred in the other bed. Is it morning? Go back to sleep. You don't have to be up for 2 more hours. Chris won't be here until 7:30. But Katie sat up, rubbing her eyes. I'm too nervous to sleep anyway. First day at a new school. What if everyone thinks I'm weird? What if I'm too far behind in my classes? Rachel crossed to her sister's bed and sat on the edge. You're smart and you're strong. You've been through things most kids your age can't imagine. You're going to walk in there, and you're going to be fine. And if it's hard, you come home and tell me, and we'll figure it out together. Together, Katie echoed. With the Freedom Riders too, I guess. Yeah, with them too. They got ready in the dark, quiet motel room. Rachel dressed in jeans and a plain shirt, then added the red hoodie Beth had given her. It felt good to wear bright colors after weeks of just trying to be invisible. Katie chose the blue jacket and a pair of jeans that actually fit right. They looked like normal girls again. They looked like people who had somewhere to go and someone expecting them. At 5:20, Rachel's phone buzzed. I'm outside, Beth's text read. No rush, whenever you're ready. Rachel grabbed the small backpack they'd gotten from Goodwill and headed out. Katie followed, locking the door behind them. The November morning was cold and dark, the sky just beginning to show the first hints of gray dawn. Beth's blue Honda sat running in the lot, heat pouring from the vents when Rachel opened the door. Morning, Beth said cheerfully. You look ready. Katie, you okay? Nervous, Katie admitted from the back seat. Totally normal. I'll drop you both at the bakery first. Rachel can get started, and Katie can hang out in the office until Chris comes to get her. Sound good? The drive through pre-dawn Portland was quiet. A few cars on the road, delivery trucks making their rounds, street lights reflecting off damp pavement from last night's rain. The city felt peaceful at this hour, like it was taking a breath before the day really started. Beth's Bakery sat on a corner in a neighborhood Rachel didn't know well. The sign read Beth's Bakery, fresh every day in simple letters. Lights glowed from inside, and Rachel could see someone moving around through the window. That's Caroline, Beth said, parking behind the building. She's my head baker. Been with me for 8 years. You'll like her. Inside, the warmth hit Rachel like a hug. The smell of bread baking, coffee brewing, vanilla and cinnamon and butter. It smelled like home should smell. Like safety. Caroline looked up from where she was kneading dough, flour dusting her dark skin, a smile spreading across her face. You must be Rachel, she said. Beth's told me all about you. Welcome to the team. 2 other women were there too. One was young, maybe mid-20s, with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. The other was older, 50s maybe, with gray streaks in her brown hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Both wore aprons covered in flour and stains from years of use. This is Jamie, Beth said, gesturing to the younger woman. And this is Patricia. Ladies, this is Rachel Morrison. She starts today. Be nice. We always nice, Patricia said, her voice warm. Come here, honey. Let me show you where we keep the aprons. The next hour was a blur of instruction. How to measure flour properly. How to check bread for doneness. How to work the industrial mixer. How to package baked goods for the display case. Caroline taught with patience, showing Rachel each step multiple times, letting her practice until her hands remembered the movements. Katie sat in the small office off the kitchen, doing homework and drinking hot chocolate Beth had made for her. At 7:15, the front bell chimed, and Chris walked in wearing his Navy uniform, ready to head to the base. Hey Katie, he said with an easy smile. Ready for your first day? Katie looked at Rachel, uncertainty clear on her young face. Rachel crossed the kitchen and pulled her sister into a hug. You've got this. I'll see you at 3 when Beth brings me home. Love you. Love you too. Rachel watched through the window as Chris's truck pulled away with Katie inside. Her baby sister, going back to school. Going back to normal life. It felt like watching someone walk toward a cliff edge and hoping they'd find solid ground instead of empty air. She'll be okay, Beth said quietly, appearing beside Rachel. Chris is good with kids. His younger brother is Katie's age. He'll make sure she gets an okay and knows where to go. What if the other kids are mean to her? What if she can't catch up on the work? Then we'll deal with it. One day at a time, remember. Beth handed Rachel an apron. Come on. Monday mornings are busy. Time to learn the real work. By 8 o'clock, the bakery was open and customers started trickling in. Beth worked the counter, while Rachel helped in the back, learning how to frost cupcakes and fill pastries and arrange cookies on trays. Caroline moved through the kitchen like a conductor leading an orchestra, keeping everything running smoothly, making sure nothing burned or overbaked or came out wrong. Patricia told stories while she worked. About her own hard times 20 years ago, about how she'd found this job when she thought her life was over, about how Beth had taken a chance on her when nobody else would. This bakery, it's more than a business, Patricia said. It's a place where broken people come to heal. We've all got our stories. Now you're part of that story too. Around 10 in the morning, the door chimed and Rachel looked up from the cupcakes she was frosting to see Bear walk in. He wore regular clothes today instead of his leather vest. Jeans and a flannel shirt. He looked almost normal, except for the way everyone in the bakery lit up when they saw him. Morning, Bear, Caroline called from the ovens. Usual order. You know it. He walked to the counter where Beth was working. How's our new girl doing? She's a natural, Beth said. Fast learner. Good hands. I think we're keeping her. Bear caught Rachel's eye through the kitchen door and gave her a nod of approval. Something warm spread through Rachel's chest. Pride, maybe. Or belonging. The feeling that she was doing something right for the first time in months. The morning rushed by. Rachel learned how to work quickly without sacrificing quality. How to judge when bread was ready to come out. How to tell good dough from overworked dough just by touch. Her hands remembered things she didn't know she'd learned, muscle memory from helping her father cook when she was younger. Measuring and mixing and timing. It all came back. At noon, Beth called Rachel to the front and handed her a sandwich and a bottle of water. Lunch break. 30 minutes. There's a bench out back where it's quiet. Rachel sat in the weak November sun, eating the best sandwich she'd had in months. Turkey and Swiss on fresh bread from this morning's batch. She checked her phone and found a text from Chris. Katie's doing great. Made her eat lunch with me and some other kids from the base families. She's smiling. Don't worry. The relief was so strong Rachel had to put down her sandwich until her hands stopped shaking. Katie was okay. Katie was going to be okay. Mind if I join you? Bear's voice made Rachel look up. He stood at the back door holding his own sandwich, waiting for permission. Please, Rachel said, scooting over on the bench. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Bear spoke. George called me this morning. He's already got a lead on that insurance money. One of his old contacts at the insurance company remembered the Morrison file. Said it was flagged as problematic because the payout was challenged by the hospital but never properly resolved. George thinks he can untangle it. Really? Rachel's voice came out small. Really? Might take a few weeks, but is optimistic. That's not a promise, understand? But it's hope. Hope's more than I had a few days ago. Bear nodded slowly. Rachel, I want to tell you something. When I saw you in that parking lot, something in my chest just broke open. You looked exactly like my daughter did the last time I saw her. Same desperate eyes. Same way of holding yourself like you were trying to take up as little space as possible. Like you were apologizing for existing. Rachel stayed quiet, letting him talk. My Melissa, she was 12 when she died. Car accident, drunk driver, wrong place, wrong time. After we lost her, Beth and I almost didn't make it. Marriage nearly ended. I was angry at God, at the world, at myself for not protecting her. Took me years to realize I couldn't have stopped it. Took even longer to figure out what to do with all that grief and rage. What did you do? Rachel asked. I started helping people. Started the charity work with the club. Every person I helped, every family we pulled out of crisis. It felt like honoring Melissa. Like saying her life mattered so much that losing her had to mean something. Had to create something good in the world. Otherwise, what's the point? He looked at Rachel directly. You and Katie, you're not replacing my daughter. But helping you, it helps me. It lets me be the person I wish had been there for Melissa if she'd lived and ever needed help. Does that make sense? Yeah, Rachel said. It makes sense. My dad used to say that pain either makes you bitter or better. Sounds like you chose better. Trying to, Bear said. Every day I try to. Some days are harder than others. They finished their lunch and went back inside. The afternoon was steadier than the morning, with a constant flow of customers but nothing overwhelming. Rachel learned the register system, how to bag orders, how to make change and smile at strangers even when she was tired. By 3 o'clock, her feet ached and her arms were sore from kneading dough, but she felt accomplished. She'd done a real day of work. She'd earned her place here. Beth drove her back to the motel, where Katie was already waiting, dropped off by Chris 15 minutes earlier. Katie burst out of the room when she saw Beth's car, practically bouncing with excitement. Rachel, it was good. It was actually good. I have 3 classes with this girl named Amy, and she's super nice. She invited me to eat lunch with her and her friends tomorrow. And my English teacher said I'm not as far behind as she thought I'd be. And Chris introduced me to some kids whose parents are in the military, and they were all really cool. Rachel hugged her sister, feeling the tension of the day drain away. Katie was okay. Better than okay. Katie was thriving. I'm so glad, Katie. That's amazing. Beth smiled at them both. See? I told you it would be fine. Now, tomorrow morning, same time. Rachel, you did great today. Caroline said you're one of the quickest learners she's ever trained. After Beth left, the sisters collapsed onto their beds, exhausted but happy. They'd made it through day 1. Both of them. Together. Tell me about the bakery, Katie said. So Rachel did. She told Katie about Caroline and Patricia and Jamie. About the industrial mixes and the smell of bread and the satisfaction of pulling a perfect batch of cookies from the oven. About Bear showing up and how he'd told her about his daughter. About feeling useful for the first time since their father died. It sounds nice, Katie said. Like maybe we're going to be okay here. Yeah, Rachel agreed. Maybe we really are. That night, Rachel lay in bed thinking about the past 48 hours. From desperate and homeless to employed and housed in 2 days. It felt impossible, but it was real. Her sore muscles proved it. The money in her pocket from Beth, an advance on her first paycheck, proved it. The text messages from Beth and Bear and Chris checking on them proved it. They had people now. A community. A support system. Things she'd taken for granted before her father got sick, back when life was normal and she didn't know how lucky she was. Now she knew. Now she understood how precious it was to have people who cared whether you lived or died, whether you succeeded or failed, whether you had food and warmth and safety. Tomorrow they'd do it again. Rachel would go to the bakery at 5:30. Katie would go to school at 7:30. They'd work and learn and come home to each other. They'd keep moving forward, one day at a time, building towards something better. And Thursday, they'd move into their apartment. Their actual home. A place that was theirs. Rachel reached over and grabbed her phone. She typed out a text to Bear. Made it through day 1. Thank you for giving me a chance. His response came quick. You earned that chance. You just needed someone to open the door. Sleep well. Tomorrow's going to be even better. Rachel believed him. For the first time in months, when someone told her things would get better, she actually believed them. Because she'd seen it happen. She was living it. In the other bed, Katie was already asleep, her breathing even and peaceful. Rachel watched her sister in the dim light from the street lamp outside and made a silent promise. She'd never let them fall that far again. She'd work as hard as she needed to, accept all the help offered, and build them a life worth living. A life their father would be proud of. The Freedom Riders had given them a second chance. Rachel was determined not to waste it. Tuesday morning started the same as Monday. 4:30 alarm, quick breakfast, Beth's car in the parking lot at 5:20. But today felt different. Today Rachel knew what she was walking into. Today she had confidence that she could do the work, that she belonged in that kitchen. Caroline greeted her with a smile and put her straight to work on the morning's cookie batch. Patricia and Jamie arrived minutes later, and the kitchen filled with comfortable chatter and the sounds of production. Rachel found a rhythm, her hands moving with more certainty than yesterday, her mind already anticipating the next step in each process. At 7, a new woman walked in through the back door. She was probably 40, with red hair and a tired smile. Beth introduced her as Maria. She works the front counter Tuesday through Thursday. Rachel, Maria's got a story similar to yours. She'll tell it to you sometime. Maria caught Rachel's eye and nodded, a look of understanding passing between them. Another person who'd been where Rachel was. Another survivor who'd found her way to Beth's Bakery and discovered it was more than just a job. The morning customers included several bikers from the Freedom Riders. They came in groups of 2 or 3, ordering coffee and pastries, chatting with Beth, always making a point to wave at Rachel through the kitchen door. Wrench came in around 9 and asked Beth to send Rachel out front for a minute. "Got something for you," he said when Rachel emerged, wiping flour from her hands. He held out a set of keys. "Your new car." "Well, new to you. It's parked around back. Honda Accord, 2010, 140,000 miles, but runs great. I changed the oil, checked all the fluids, put new brakes on the front. You're good to go." Rachel stared at the keys in her hand. "You're just giving me a car. Club bought it. I made sure it's safe. Now you've got transportation. I don't know how to thank you." Wrench shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. "You don't thank me. You just drive safe and take care of your sister. That's thanks enough." After Wrench left, Rachel stood in the bakery holding car keys, fighting back tears. A car. They had a car again. Katie could get to school even if Chris wasn't available. Rachel could get to work. They had independence, freedom, mobility, all things she'd taken for granted 6 months ago. Beth came up beside her. "It's a lot, isn't it? All this help coming at once." "I keep waiting for someone to tell me there's been a mistake," Rachel admitted. "That I'm not actually worthy of all this." "Stop that thinking right now," Beth said firmly. "Worthiness has nothing to do with it. You're a person in need, and we have the resources to help. That's all it takes. Now, come meet someone. Mike just walked in, and I want you to talk to him." The man Beth led her to was younger than most of the Freedom Riders Rachel had met. Maybe 30, with dark hair and kind eyes. He wore a t-shirt that read Veterans Resource Center and had tattoos covering both arms. "Mike Patterson," he said, shaking Rachel's hand. "People call me Wrench because I'm good with engines, but I'm also a counselor at the Veterans Center downtown. Bear mentioned you, and your sister lost your dad recently. Grief counseling is what I do. Just wanted you to know the resource is available if you need it." "I don't know if I'm ready for that," Rachel said honestly. "Totally okay. I'm not pushing. Just letting you know I'm here when and if you decide you want to talk. Your sister too. We have youth counselors who work with teenagers dealing with loss." He handed her a business card. "No pressure. No timeline. Just an open door whenever you need it." Rachel tucked the card in her pocket, touched by the thoughtfulness. These people thought of everything. They anticipated needs Rachel hadn't even identified yet and offered solutions before she had to ask. The day continued with its steady rhythm. Rachel learned more about the business side of the bakery, how Beth managed inventory and scheduled production and dealt with suppliers. She learned that Patricia had been homeless 15 years ago before Beth hired her, that Jamie was working her way through community college, that Maria had left an abusive husband 2 years ago and started over with nothing but her 2 kids and determination. "This bakery employs broken people," Patricia said during the afternoon lull. "Every single one of us has a story. Beth's got a gift for finding people who need a second chance and giving them somewhere to heal while they work. You're in good company here, honey." At 3, Beth drove Rachel back to the motel, where Katie was waiting with homework spread across the small table. "How was day 2? Rachel asked. "Even better than day 1, Katie said. Amy invited me to hang out this weekend. Is that okay? Of course it's okay. I'm so glad you're making friends. That evening, Rachel decided to test out their new car. She drove Katie to the grocery store, where they used some of Rachel's advance paycheck to buy a few extra supplies. The car ran smoothly, and Rachel felt a surge of freedom as they drove through Portland with the radio playing and Katie singing along. This was normal. This was what regular people did. They drove places and bought groceries and lived their lives without constant crisis. Wednesday brought the financial counselor meeting. Beth picked up both Rachel and Katie after work, and they drove to the Freedom Riders clubhouse together. The counselor, a woman named Diana Foster, was waiting in a small office off the main meeting room. Diana was probably 60, with silver hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She had Rachel's box of papers already spread across the desk, organized into neat piles. George sat beside her, looking pleased with himself. "Okay, girls," Diana said, gesturing for them to sit. "George and I have been digging into your father's financial situation. I want to walk you through what we found." She pulled out a folder and opened it. First, the medical debt. Your father owed approximately $87,000 to various hospitals and providers when he died. That's a lot of money, but here's what most people don't know. Medical debt dies with the person unless there's an estate with assets to pay it. You girls are not responsible for your father's medical bills. They cannot come after you personally. "But the hospital kept calling me," Rachel said. "They said I had to pay." "They were wrong, or they were hoping you didn't know your rights," Diana said bluntly. "You're a minor, legally. Well, you were when your father died. Katie definitely is. Neither of you signed any documents taking responsibility for the debt. Therefore, you don't owe it. I've already sent letters to all the creditors explaining this and telling them to cease contact." The relief was so sudden Rachel felt dizzy. "So we don't owe $8,000 to $7,000. "No, you don't." George leaned forward. "Now, the life insurance. I found it. Your father's policy was with Northwestern Life. $50,000, split between you and Katie as beneficiaries. The hospital did try to file a claim against it, but they did it incorrectly. The insurance company froze the funds pending resolution, but then your father's case got lost in their system. No one followed up. The money has been sitting in a holding account for 3 months." Rachel's heart hammered in her chest. "Can we get it?" "Yes. I've already started the paperwork. As the older beneficiary, you'll need to file the claim properly. Diana and I will help you. Within 4 to 6 weeks, you should receive a check for $25,000. Katie will receive the same, but since she's a minor, it'll go into a trust account that she can access when she turns 18. $25,000. Rachel couldn't process it. That was more money than she'd ever imagined having. "What do I do with it?" Diana pulled out another document. "That's what we're here to discuss. I recommend you put most of it in a savings account as an emergency fund. But some of it can be used for immediate needs. Security deposits, clothing, establishing credit, maybe a small amount for things that bring you joy. We'll make a budget together." They spent the next hour going through finances. Diana explained checking accounts and savings accounts and credit scores. She explained how to build financial stability slowly and carefully. She helped Rachel set goals. A car fund for when the gifted Honda eventually needed replacing. A college fund for Katie. An emergency reserve that meant they'd never be desperate again. "The Freedom Riders have given you an incredible gift," Diana said. "They've stabilized your immediate crisis. Now this insurance money gives you a foundation to build on. You're going to be okay, Rachel. Both of you. You're going to be more than okay." Walking out of the clubhouse that evening, Rachel felt like she was floating. The crushing debt was gone. The insurance money was real and coming. She had a job and an apartment and a car and people who cared. In less than a week, her entire life had transformed. Bear was waiting by the door. "Good news." "The best news," Rachel said. "We're going to be okay." "I knew you would be. Come on, there's someone I want you to meet." He led her to the main room, where a woman in her 50s was setting up folding chairs. She had gray hair cut short and warm brown eyes. "This is Linda," Bear said. "She runs our community outreach program." Linda, this is Rachel and Katie Morrison. Linda came over and shook both their hands. I've heard wonderful things about you girls. I'm setting up for tonight's support group meeting. We have about 8 young people who come regularly, all dealing with loss or hardship. You're welcome to join us anytime. Tonight we're talking about rebuilding after crisis. Thought it might be relevant. Rachel looked at Katie, who shrugged. Could be good. Okay, Rachel said. We'll stay. The support group started at 6. 8 young people showed up, ranging from teenagers to mid-20s. Linda facilitated with gentle guidance, letting people share their stories or just listen as they needed. Rachel heard about a girl who'd lost both parents in an accident. A young man who'd aged out of foster care, with nowhere to go. A teenager whose family had been homeless for 2 years before the Freedom Riders helped them. When it was Rachel's turn to share, she told an abbreviated version of their story. Dad's death, the debt, the desperation, meeting Bear in a parking lot. Several people nodded with recognition. They understood. They'd been there. A girl named Sophie, maybe 18, spoke up after Rachel finished. The hardest part for me was accepting help. I kept feeling like I didn't deserve it. Like I was taking advantage of people's kindness. I feel that too, Rachel admitted. Every day I worry I'm too much. That I'm asking for too much. Linda intervened gently. That's normal. But here's what I want you all to remember. Needing help doesn't make you weak. Accepting help doesn't make you a burden. We all need each other. That's how humanity works. The Freedom Riders help you today. Someday, you'll help someone else. It's a circle, not a transaction. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. Afterward, several people came up to Rachel and Katie, welcoming them, exchanging phone numbers, inviting them to hang out. Sophie asked if Katie wanted to come to a movie with her and some friends on Saturday. Katie agreed, her face bright with excitement. On the drive back to the motel, Katie was quiet for a while. Then she said, I like those people. They get it. They understand what it's like to have your whole world fall apart. Yeah, Rachel agreed. It helps, doesn't it? Not feeling so alone. Rachel, do you think Dad would be proud of us? For how we're handling this? Rachel thought about their father. About his kindness and his faith in people, and his belief that asking for help wasn't weakness. Yeah, Katie. I think he'd be really proud. I think he'd love the Freedom Riders and what they are doing for us. And I think he'd tell us to accept every bit of help offered and to pay it forward when we could. Thursday morning came with anticipation humming through Rachel's veins. Moving day. After work, they'd pack up their few belongings and move into their actual apartment. Their home. The wind cut through Rachel Morrison's thin jacket like ice water through paper. She stood 20 feet from the gas station pumps, watching her breath turn to fog in the November air, watching the group of bikers laugh and joke as they filled their tanks. Their leather cuts bore patches and symbols she didn't understand. Their motorcycles gleamed even under the gray Portland sky. And she had exactly $3.47 to her name. In the car behind her, Katie pressed her face against the window. Her little sister's lips had gone pale, and her hands were tucked under her arms for warmth. The car heater had died yesterday, the same day the engine started making that horrible grinding noise. They'd barely made it to this gas station before the whole thing just stopped. Now it sat cold and dead in the parking lot, same as their hope had been for the past 3 weeks. 3 weeks since the funeral. 3 weeks since Rachel found out that her father's medical bills had taken everything. The house was gone. The bank accounts were empty. Even the life insurance had somehow disappeared into a maze of hospital debt and legal fees that Rachel couldn't begin to understand. She was 19 years old with a high school diploma and half a semester of community college before she'd had to drop out to take care of Dad. Katie was 16. They had nobody else. Rachel's stomach cramped with hunger. She'd given Katie the last granola bar this morning, told her she'd already eaten. The lie came easy after weeks of practice. But now her head felt light, her hands shook, and she knew they couldn't spend another night in the car. Not with temperatures dropping below freezing tonight. Not with Katie already coming down with something, her cough getting worse by the hour. The biggest biker threw his head back and laughed at something his friend said. He was massive, easily 6'4", with a gray beard and arms like tree trunks. The back of his leather vest read Freedom Riders MC Portland above a patch that said President. His friends called him Bear, and Rachel understood why. He looked like he could crush her skull with one hand. But he was her only option. She'd tried the churches yesterday. They'd given her a food box and some pamphlets but said their emergency housing was full. The shelters were packed. The social services office said there was a waiting list. Her father's friends had stopped returning her calls after the first week. Her mother had left when Katie was born, just walked out one day and never came back. There was nobody else to ask. Nobody else to turn to. Rachel forced her feet to move. Each step across the parking lot felt like walking to her own execution. The bikers' conversation got clearer as she approached. They were talking about a ride through the Columbia River Gorge, about stopping for lunch in Hood River. Normal things. Human things. Maybe that was a good sign. She stopped 6 feet away, close enough to speak, far enough to run if she needed to. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Excuse me." The big one, Bear, turned toward her. His eyes were gray like winter clouds, and they swept over her once, taking in her stained jacket, her worn-out shoes, the way she was shaking. Not just from cold. From fear. From hunger. From the weight of 3 weeks of disaster and 19 years of trying to hold everything together. "Yeah." His voice was rough but not unkind. Rachel's prepared speech died in her throat. She'd practiced this. She was going to explain about the car, about Katie, about how they just needed enough for one night in a motel and maybe some food. She was going to promise to pay it back somehow, someday. She was going to keep her dignity intact while begging a stranger for money. Instead, the truth came tumbling out in a broken whisper. "My sister and I are hungry. Our car died. We have nowhere to go. I know you don't know me, and I know this is crazy, but could you spare some change? Anything. Please." The other bikers had gone quiet. 5 of them total, all watching her now. Rachel felt her face burn with shame despite the cold. This was it. This was rock bottom. Standing in a gas station parking lot in Portland, Oregon, begging bikers for spare change while her little sister watched from a dead car. Bear studied her for a long moment. Then his eyes shifted past her shoulder to the car, where Katie's pale face was pressed against the glass. Something changed in his expression. Something that looked almost like pain. "What's your name?" he asked. "Rachel. Rachel Morrison. That's my sister Katie in the car. She's 16. Our dad just died and everything went wrong, and I don't know what else to do." The words kept coming, tumbling over each other. "I'm not on drugs. We're not criminals. I just need help. Just enough to get us through tonight. Please." Bear reached into his pocket, and Rachel's heart jumped into her throat. This was it. Maybe he'd give her $10. Maybe 20 if she was incredibly lucky. Enough for a meal at least. Enough to buy them a few more hours to figure something out. His hand came out holding a thick wallet. He opened it and pulled out bills. Not ones or fives. 20s. 10s. 50s. He counted out money like it was nothing, like it didn't mean everything in the world to her. When he held it out, Rachel saw it was at least $200. "Take it," he said. Rachel stared at the money. This didn't happen. People didn't do this. There had to be a catch. There had to be something he wanted in return. Nobody just gave away $200 to a stranger in a parking lot. "I can't," she whispered, even though every cell in her body screamed at her to grab it. The bakery day flew by. Rachel worked with increasing confidence, her skills improving with each batch of cookies, each tray of bread. Caroline pulled her aside at lunch and said, "You're good at this. Natural talent. If you wanted to, you could train as a real baker. Not just a helper, but someone who creates recipes and runs a kitchen." Really? The idea hadn't occurred to Rachel. Really? Think about it. Beth's been talking about opening a second location. She'll need a head baker for that eventually. Could be you, if you wanted to work toward it. The possibility opened up in Rachel's mind like a door she hadn't known existed. A career. A future. Not just survival but actual success. "I'd like that. I'd like to learn." "Then we'll teach you," Caroline promised. At 3, The entire crew knocked off early to help with the move. Beth, Caroline, Patricia, Jamie, and Maria all piled into cars and headed to the motel. Bear arrived with a truck. Wrench came with tools in case anything needed assembling. Mike brought boxes and packing supplies. The Morrison sisters didn't have much to move. Their clothes, the food from the kitchenette, the few personal items salvaged from their old life. Everything fit in the truck bed with room to spare. But the Freedom Riders had brought more. Furniture from donated items the club kept in storage. A couch, 2 beds, a kitchen table with chairs, lamps, dishes, towels. Everything needed to make the apartment feel like home. At the apartment building, more people were waiting. George and Martha with cleaning supplies. Linda with groceries and household essentials. Chris with his younger brother, both ready to help carry heavy items. Pastor Bill Henderson from the church, who'd brought a welcome basket of baked goods and a blessing for the home. The move took 2 hours. The men carried furniture and assembled bed frames. The women unpacked boxes and arranged the kitchen. Katie directed where things should go, her eyes bright with excitement. Rachel floated through it all in a daze of gratitude and disbelief. When everything was done, the apartment looked like a real home. Mismatched furniture but comfortable. A stock kitchen. Made beds with clean sheets. Towels in the bathroom. Food in the pantry. Everything they needed. Bay gathered everyone in the small living room. Before we go, I want to say something. Rachel, Katie, this apartment is yours. The club's paying the first 3 months of rent, like we said. But this isn't charity. This is investment. We're investing in you, because we believe in you. We believe you're going to take this chance and build something good with it. And someday, when you're stable and thriving, you're going to help someone else the way we're helping you now. That's the deal. That's how this works. Rachel's throat was too tight to speak, so Katie answered for both of them. We promise. We'll pay it forward. We'll help others. I know you will, Bear said. Now, everyone out. Let these girls settle into their new home. After everyone left, Rachel and Katie stood in the middle of their living room and looked at each other. Their apartment. Their space. No one could kick them out. No one could take it away. For the first time since their father died, they had stability. They had home. Want to order pizza? Rachel asked. We have our own address now. We can have food delivered. Katie laughed, slightly hysterical with relief and joy. Yeah. Let's order pizza and eat it on our own couch in our own apartment. They did exactly that. Ordered pizza, sat on their second-hand couch, and watched TV on the small television Linda had brought. They laughed at stupid commercials and argued about what to watch next and existed in the beautiful normalcy of being 2 sisters in their own place. That night, sleeping in her own bed in her own room, Rachel thought about the past week. 7 days ago, she'd been desperate and homeless. Now she had a job, a home, a car, a community, and money coming that would secure their future. 7 days. 1 week. That's all it took for everything to change, once the right help arrived. She thought about all the people who'd made this possible. Bear with his generous heart. Beth with her bakery and her understanding. The entire Freedom Riders Club with their commitment to helping others. Diana and George with their financial expertise. Linda and her support groups. Mike and his counseling services. Caroline and the bakery crew who'd welcomed her. Chris who drove Katie to school. Martha and Patricia and Maria and Jenny and Pastor Bill and Sophie and all the others who'd shown up, given their time, offered their help. It took a village, people said. Rachel understood that now. It took a community deciding to care. It took people looking at strangers and seeing family. It took bikers with rough exteriors and soft hearts who'd chosen to make helping others their mission. Rachel pulled out her phone and took a picture of her room. Simple but hers. She sent it to Bear with a message, "Thank you for giving us a home." His response came quickly. "You gave yourselves a home by having the courage to ask for help. We just opened the door. You walked through it. Proud of you, kid. Sleep well." Rachel did sleep well. Better than she had in months. In a real bed, in a warm room, in an apartment that was hers, surrounded by a community that cared whether she lived or died. She slept the sleep of someone who'd been lost and was now found. Someone who'd been alone and now had family. Tomorrow was Friday. End of her first full week at the bakery. Katie's first full week back at school. The beginning of their new normal. But tonight, she just breathed in the peace of knowing they were safe. They were home. They were going to be okay. And it all started because one desperate girl had asked a biker for spare change, and he'd looked at her and decided to give her everything instead. Friday morning, Rachel woke in her own apartment and had to remind herself it was real. Sunlight streamed through windows that were hers. She padded to the kitchen and made coffee in a machine Linda had donated. Katie emerged from the second bedroom, still sleepy but smiling. "First morning in our place," Katie said, pouring cereal into a bowl. "First of many," Rachel agreed. Beth picked Rachel up at 5:20, same as every morning. But today, Beth had news. "We're catering a charity event tomorrow. Big fundraiser for the Children's Hospital. I need all hands on deck. Would you be willing to work Saturday? Time and a half, plus tips from the event." "Absolutely," Rachel said. Working extra meant extra money. Money she could save, could use to pay the Freedom Riders back faster, could put toward Katie's future. At the bakery, the Friday rush started early. Businesses placing orders for weekend events, families stocking up for gatherings, the regular morning crowd wanting their coffee and pastries. Rachel worked the front counter with Maria, learning to juggle multiple orders while keeping customers happy. A woman came in around 10 carrying a folder. She looked professional, 30s, with dark hair and a warm smile. "Is Beth available?" Beth emerged from the kitchen, and her face lit up. "Amanda, I didn't know you were coming by." "I wanted to talk to you about a story," Amanda said. Then she noticed Rachel. "Actually, I wanted to talk to both of you." They gathered in the small office, and Amanda pulled out a notebook. "I'm Amanda Foster, reporter for the Portland Tribune. I've been following the Freedom Riders community work for years. This week, someone sent me a tip about two sisters they recently helped. Rachel and Katie Morrison. That's you, isn't it?" Rachel's stomach clenched. "Yes, but I don't want to be a news story." "I understand the hesitation," Amanda said gently. "But here's why I'm asking. The Freedom Riders do incredible work, but most people see bikers and make assumptions. They don't know about the charity rides, the families helped, the thousands of dollars raised every year for people in crisis. Your story could change that. It could help people understand what this community really is." Beth put a hand on Rachel's shoulder. "It's completely your choice. No pressure either way." Rachel thought about it. About how scared she'd been approaching Beth that night. About the assumptions she'd made about bikers in leather vests. About how wrong she'd been. If it helps other people get help, or if it changes how people see the Freedom Riders, then okay, I'll do it. Amanda interviewed her for an hour. Rachel told the whole story, from her father's death to the desperate moment in the parking lot to everything that had happened since. Amanda took careful notes, asking thoughtful questions, treating Rachel's story with respect. "This will run next week," Amanda said as she prepared to leave. "I'll send you a copy before it publishes, so you can make sure I got everything right. Thank you for trusting me with your story." After Amanda left, Rachel felt exposed but also relieved. Maybe her story could help someone else. Maybe another desperate person would see it and know that asking for help wasn't shameful. That kindness still existed in the world. The day continued with its rhythm. Rachel was learning to anticipate the flow, to know when the rushes would hit, when things would slow. She was becoming part of the bakery's ecosystem, fitting into the team seamlessly. Caroline even let her experiment with a cookie recipe during the afternoon lull, encouraging her creativity. At 3, Rachel drove herself home in her own car. The independence still felt surreal. Katie was already there with her new friend Amy. They were doing homework together, music playing softly from Katie's phone. "Hey Rachel," Amy said. "Your place is nice." "Thanks," Rachel said, pride warming her chest. "Katie, you good here? I need to run some errands." "We're fine. Amy's staying for dinner if that's okay." "Totally okay." Rachel drove to the bank, where Diana had helped her set up accounts. She deposited her first real paycheck, watching the numbers appear in her balance. Not a lot, but honest money she'd earned. She opened the savings account Diana had recommended and transferred half the check there immediately. Emergency fund. Future security. Never being that desperate again. Next, she drove to a thrift store and bought a few more kitchen items. Mixing bowls, measuring cups, a good knife. Things that would let her cook real meals at home instead of relying on restaurant food or frozen dinners. She was building a life, piece by piece. On the way home, she stopped at a grocery store and bought ingredients for spaghetti. Nothing fancy, but she'd make dinner for Katie and Amy. She'd be the big sister who had her life together, who could take care of things, who wasn't just surviving but actually living. At home, she cooked while the girls did homework. The apartment filled with the smell of garlic and tomato sauce. Amy complimented the meal and asked Rachel about working at the bakery. They ate together like a normal family, like normal teenagers having a normal Friday night. After Amy left, Katie helped Rachel clean up. They worked in comfortable silence until Katie said, "I'm really happy here. I know it's only been a week, but I'm happy." "Me too," Rachel admitted. "It's weird, right? How fast things changed." Sophie said that's how it works sometimes. You're drowning, and then someone throws you a rope, and suddenly you can breathe again. That's what the Freedom Riders did. They threw us a rope. Saturday morning came early. Rachel arrived at the bakery at 4 to help prep for the charity event. The team was already in full production mode. Hundreds of cookies to bake, dozens of cakes to frost, countless pastries to prepare. Rachel jumped in, her hands moving with growing confidence. By noon, they'd loaded everything into Beth's van and Bay's truck. The event was at a hotel downtown, a fancy ballroom setup with wealthy donors and local celebrities. Rachel felt out of place in her bakery apron among the formal wear, but Beth reminded her they were here to work, not socialize. The Freedom Riders were there too. A dozen bikers in their vests, helping set up tables, direct traffic, ensure everything ran smoothly. They looked intimidating until you saw them laughing with children or patiently explaining their charity work to curious donors. Rachel watched people's faces change as they talked to the bikers, watched assumptions crumble, watched understanding dawn. During a quiet moment, Tom Bear approached Rachel with an older couple. "Rachel, these are the Johnsons, major donors to the Children's Hospital. I was telling them your story." Mrs. Johnson had kind eyes and an expensive dress. "My dear, Bear told us what you've been through. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you," Rachel said, unsure what else to say. "We'd like to help," Mr. Johnson said. "We have a scholarship program for young people pursuing education after hardship. Beth mentioned you're interested in culinary training. We'd like to offer you a spot in our program." Rachel blinked. "I don't understand." "Full tuition to the Pacific Northwest Culinary Institute," Mrs. Johnson explained. 2-year program. You'd graduate with certification in professional baking and pastry arts. Beth says you have talent. We'd like to help you develop it." Rachel looked at Beth, who was beaming. "I didn't want to say anything until I knew it was confirmed. But I've been talking to the Johnsons for a few days. They believe in you, Rachel. We all do." "I can't afford culinary school," Rachel said, her voice shaking. "Even with the insurance money, I need that for Katie and emergencies and—" "Full scholarship," Mr. Johnson interrupted. "Everything covered. You'd work at the bakery during the day and take evening classes. Completely manageable. What do you say?" What could she say? This was another impossible gift, another door opening when she thought she'd already received more than she deserved. "Yes. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you, but yes." Mrs. Johnson hugged her. "You thank us by succeeding. By becoming the baker Beth thinks you can be. By helping others someday when you're in a position to do so." The event continued, but Rachel moved through the rest of it in a daze. Culinary school. Professional training. A career, not just a job. She thought survival was the goal. Now people were handing her the chance to thrive. That evening, back at the apartment, Rachel told Katie about the scholarship. Katie screamed and hugged her, and they both cried happy tears. This was more than they dared to dream. More than seemed possible just a week ago. Sunday was their first full day off together. They slept in, made breakfast in their own kitchen, and decided to explore their neighborhood. They walked to a nearby park and sat on swings like they used to when they were younger, before life got complicated and hard. "I've been thinking," Katie said, swinging gently. "About what Linda said. About the circle of help. When I'm older, I want to do what the Freedom Riders do. I want to help people." "We'll do it together," Rachel promised. "When we're stable, when we have resources, we'll find people who need help and we'll be there for them. Like they were there for us." Exactly like that. They spent the afternoon organizing the apartment, making it truly theirs. Putting up a few decorations Sophie had given them. Arranging furniture until it felt right. Creating a home out of donated pieces and second-hand finds and their own determination. That evening, Linda texted inviting them to Sunday dinner at Martha and George's house. Rachel drove them over, following GPS through a neighborhood of modest homes with neat yards. Martha's house smelled like pot roast and fresh bread. 6 other people were there. 2 other families the Freedom Riders had helped. A single dad with his teenage son. A woman with her elderly mother. Everyone had a story. Everyone had been desperate once. Everyone had been saved by the same community that saved Rachel and Katie. They ate together, shared stories, laughed about the absurdity of hitting rock bottom and the miracle of being pulled back up. The single dad, Marcus, had been homeless 2 years ago. Now he managed a restaurant. The woman, Jennifer, had been fleeing domestic violence with nothing. Now she ran a nonprofit helping other women escape bad situations. "That's what this community does," Martha said, serving dessert. "It catches people when they fall. It gives them time to heal. And then it watches them fly. Every person at this table was broken once. Look at us now." Rachel looked around the table. Strong people. Survivors. Thrivers. People who'd taken their second chances and built something good with them. This would be her someday. Her and Katie. They'd be the success stories, the proof that help works, that kindness matters, that community can heal. Walking back to their car that night, Katie said, "I like this life we're building." "Yeah," Rachel agreed. "Me too." Monday started Rachel's second week at the bakery and Katie's second week at school. But this week felt different. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were establishing routines, building foundations, creating a life that felt sustainable and real. At the bakery, Caroline started teaching Rachel advanced techniques. How to work with temperamental dough. How to gauge oven temperatures by feel. How to taste batter and know what's missing. Professional skills that would serve her when culinary school started. Katie came home from school excited about joining the drama club. She'd made friends with a group of theater kids, and they'd invited her to audition for the fall play. "Is that okay?" she asked Rachel. "Would you come watch if I got a part?" "Of course it's okay. Of course I'll watch. I'm proud of you, Katie. You're doing so well." That week brought more stability. The insurance paperwork moved forward. Diana helped Rachel create a proper budget. Mike checked in about counseling, and Rachel admitted she might be ready to try it. The community continued to wrap around them, supporting without smothering, helping without controlling. Friday afternoon, Amanda called. "The article's ready. I'm emailing it to you now. It runs in Sunday's paper. Thought you should know." Rachel read it that evening, Katie looking over her shoulder. Amanda had told their story with compassion and respect. She'd highlighted the Freedom Riders' work, explained their mission, featured Bear's quote about honoring his daughter. She'd made Rachel sound brave instead of desperate, made their situation sound like triumph instead of tragedy. "It's good," Katie said. "It makes us sound like we're strong." "We are strong," Rachel realized. "We survived. We asked for help. We accepted it. And we're building a future. That's strength." Saturday, Rachel worked the charity bake sale the Freedom Riders were hosting. She saw people she'd met through the community. Sophie and her foster family. Marcus and his son. Jennifer and her mother. Chris and his brother. All the threads of this network that had woven itself around the Morrison sisters, holding them up, keeping them safe. Bear pulled her aside during a quiet moment. "Article comes out tomorrow. You ready for possible attention?" "I think so. If it helps someone else, it's worth it." "That's the right attitude." He squeezed her shoulder. "You're doing great, kid. Your dad would be proud. Rachel believed him. Her father had always taught her that asking for help was brave, that accepting kindness was wise, that community mattered more than independence. He'd been right about all of it. She was living proof. Sunday morning, the article hit. Rachel's phone started buzzing with texts from people she'd met through the Freedom Riders. Everyone was supportive, congratulatory, proud. The story painted the community in a beautiful light, showing the bikers as the heroes they were. But the biggest surprise came Monday afternoon. Susan, the social worker, called Rachel at the bakery. You need to see this. Check the Freedom Riders donation page. Rachel pulled it up on her phone and gasped. The article had driven a wave of donations. $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. By evening, over $50,000 had poured into the Freedom Riders Charity Fund. All because people had read about Rachel and Katie and wanted to help others like them. Bear called that evening, his voice thick with emotion. Rachel, do you understand what you've done? That money will help dozens of families. Dozens. All because you were brave enough to share your story. I just told the truth, Rachel said. Exactly. And the truth changed everything. You've given us resources to help so many more people. You've turned your pain into someone else's hope. That's the most powerful thing a person can do. That night, lying in bed in her own apartment, with her sister safe in the next room and a community supporting them both, Rachel thought about how far they'd come. 2 weeks ago, she'd been desperate enough to ask a stranger for spare change. Now she had a home, a job, a future, and she'd inadvertently helped raise $50,000 for others in crisis. She thought about the circle Linda talked about. Receiving help, getting stable, helping others. Rachel and Katie were still in the early stages, still building their foundation. But already, somehow, they'd managed to help others. Already, they were part of the solution instead of just part of the problem. Rachel pulled out her phone and texted Bear. Thank you for everything. For seeing us. For caring. For giving us a chance. I promise I won't waste it. His response came quickly. You could never waste it. You're exactly who we hoped you'd be. Strong, grateful, and already thinking about others. That's everything. Sleep well. Rachel did sleep well, dreaming of futures that seemed possible now. Culinary school. A career. Katie graduating high school, going to college. Both of them stable and happy. Both of them helping others someday, paying forward the kindness that had saved their lives. The foundation was built. Now it was time to build the rest. 3 months passed in a blur of normal life. Rachel settled into the rhythm of the bakery, her skills growing daily under Caroline's patient teaching. Katie thrived at school, her grades improving, her friend group expanding. The insurance money arrived, $25,000 that Rachel carefully allocated according to Diana's budget. Most went into savings. Some covered immediate needs. A small amount went toward making the apartment feel more like home. The rent assistance from the Freedom Riders continued through January, February, and into March. By April, Rachel would be covering it herself. The thought no longer terrified her. She'd proven she could do this. She could work, manage money, take care of her sister. She could build a life worth living. It was early March when everything shifted again. Rachel arrived at the bakery at her usual time to find Beth in tears. Caroline stood beside her, looking shaken. Patricia and Jamie huddled near the ovens, worry clear on their faces. What happened? Rachel asked, her stomach dropping. Beth looked up, mascara running down her cheeks. It's Maria. Her ex-husband found her. He showed up at her apartment last night. She's in the hospital. The news hit Rachel like a punch. Maria, who'd been so kind when Rachel started. Maria, who understood what it meant to start over. Maria, who had 2 young kids depending on her. Is she okay? Rachel asked. Physically, she'll recover, Beth said. But she's scared. Her kids are scared. She can't go back to that apartment. He knows where she lives now. She needs to disappear, start completely over somewhere he can't find her. The Freedom Riders will help, Rachel said with certainty. That's what they do. They are already mobilizing, Beth confirmed. But it's complicated. Maria needs money to relocate. She needs first month's rent and deposits in a new city. She needs transportation. She needs everything, basically, and she needs it fast. Rachel made a decision in that moment. A decision that felt terrifying and right at the same time. I can help. I have the insurance money. Beth's eyes went wide. Rachel, no. That's your emergency fund. Your security. Maria's in an emergency. She needs security. I can give her some of mine. Rachel pulled out her phone and texted Bear. Maria needs help. How much? Bear's response came fast. We're gathering resources. Probably need about $10,000 to get her relocated safely with first-year housing covered in her new city. We've got about 6 so far. Rachel texted back, without hesitation. I'll give $4,000. When do you need it? Rachel, are you sure? Completely sure. Tell me where to send it. Beth was staring at her. Rachel, that's a huge amount of money. You need that. I need it less than Maria does right now, Rachel said. I have a job. I have an apartment. I have this community supporting me. Maria has an abusive ex hunting her and 2 scared kids. It's not even a question. She made the transfer that morning, watching $4,000 leave her account and feeling no regret. Only satisfaction. The circle Linda talked about. This was her chance to step into it, to help someone the way she'd been helped. Bear called an hour later. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. You helped me when I was desperate. Now, I'm helping Maria. That's how this works, right? That's exactly how it works, Bear said, his voice rough with emotion. You're becoming exactly who I knew you would be. The Freedom Riders mobilized with impressive efficiency. Within 48 hours, they'd relocated Maria and her kids to a small town in Washington. New apartment, new job lined up at a bakery Beth knew there, new school for the kids. New identity, basically. A fresh start in a place her ex would never think to look. Before she left, Maria came to the bakery to say goodbye. She found Rachel in the back, kneading dough, and pulled her into a fierce hug. Thank you, Maria whispered. Beth told me what you did. You gave me a future. You gave my kids safety. You'd have done the same for me, Rachel said. I would. And someday, when I'm stable again, I'll help someone else. The circle continues. After Maria left, Rachel felt something shift inside her. She'd spent 3 months receiving. Now she'd given. The balance felt right. She wasn't just a charity case anymore. She was part of the community. She was someone who could help. That afternoon, Linda called. I heard what you did for Maria. That was beautiful. Listen, I have a favor to ask. We have a new family that just reached out for help. Single mom with 3 kids, evicted from their apartment, living in their car. She's too proud to ask for much, but she needs everything. Would you be willing to talk to her? Share your story? Sometimes hearing from someone who's been there helps people accept the help they need. Of course, Rachel said. When? Tomorrow. Can you come to the clubhouse after work? The next day, Rachel met Jennifer Murphy and her 3 kids. Jennifer was maybe 35, with tired eyes and proud posture. Her kids were 6, 8, and 10. All 3 looked scared and hungry and cold. Rachel saw herself in them. Saw Katie in the 8-year-old girl, who held her mother's hand too tight. Tell me your story, Rachel said gently. Jennifer's story was similar to so many others. Job loss, medical bills, eviction. The cascade of bad luck that left good people with nothing. She'd been living in her car for 2 weeks, trying to keep the kids in school, trying to maintain normalcy while her world fell apart. The Freedom Riders want to help you, Rachel said. But I can tell you're scared to accept it. Scared it's too much, scared of obligation, scared of being a burden. Am I right? Jennifer nodded, tears spilling over. I was you 4 months ago, Rachel said. Different details, same desperation. I asked a biker for spare change, and he gave me $200. Then a job. Then an apartment. Then a whole community. I fought it every step. Felt guilty. Felt unworthy. Felt like I was taking advantage. But you know what I learned? What? Jennifer whispered. That accepting help isn't weakness. It's wisdom. That letting people care for you doesn't make you a burden. It makes you human. That community only works if we let each other in when we're broken. Rachel pulled out her phone and showed Jennifer pictures. The motel room, where they'd stayed that first night. Their apartment now. Katie's school photos. Rachel at work in the bakery. This is what happens when you say yes to help. This is what's possible when you let go of pride and accept that you can't do everything alone. Jennifer's youngest child tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, I'm hungry." Rachel's heart cracked. She looked at Linda. "Can we order food? Right now." "Already done," Linda said. "Pizza's on the way." While they waited for food, Rachel talked to Jennifer about the process. The paperwork, the resources, the support systems. She explained how the Freedom Riders worked, what they'd expect, what they'd provide. She answered every question with honesty, sharing both the good parts and the hard parts. "The hard part isn't the help," Rachel said. "It's letting yourself believe you deserve it. But here's what I want you to know. Your kids deserve it. Even if you can't believe it for yourself yet, believe it for them. They deserve to be warm and fed and safe. Let the Freedom Riders give them that." Jennifer broke down then, crying in a way that sounded like relief. "Okay. Yes. Please. We'll take the help." Bear came over and crouched down to talk to the kids, while Linda took Jennifer aside to start the paperwork. Rachel sat with a 6-year-old, a little boy named Mason, and showed him videos of Portland on her phone. Normal kid things. Parks and playgrounds and places he could go once they got settled. "Are you a biker?" Mason asked. "No, but the bikers helped me and my sister when we needed it. Now we get to help you." "Why?" Rachel thought about how to explain it to a 6-year-old. "Because that's what family does. And the Freedom Riders are family to anyone who needs one." The food arrived, and Rachel watched Jennifer's kids eat like they hadn't in days. Because they probably hadn't. She remembered that hunger, that desperation. She was so glad she could help prevent it now, even in this small way. Over the next 2 weeks, Rachel watched the Freedom Riders work their magic on Jennifer's family. Motel room, then apartment. Job at a local restaurant for Jennifer. Schools enrolled for all 3 kids. Clothing, food, furniture. The same cascade of help that had saved Rachel, now saving someone else. Rachel visited Jennifer twice a week, checking in, offering support, sharing resources. It felt good to be on the helping side. To use her own hard-won knowledge to make someone else's path easier. "You're a natural at this," Linda told her one evening at the clubhouse. "Have you thought about volunteering more formally? We could use someone on our outreach team who really understands what families in crisis need." "I'd like that," Rachel said. "Once I start culinary school and get into that rhythm, I'd love to volunteer officially." Culinary school started in April. Rachel attended evening classes 3 nights a week, leaving the bakery at 3 to make it to class by 4. The program was intense, challenging, exactly what she needed. She learned classical techniques, modern innovations, business management. She was building expertise that would carry her through life. Katie continued to thrive. She got a part in the spring play, a small role, but she was proud. Rachel attended every performance, sitting with Beth and Bear and cheering loudly. Normal family things. The kind of moments their father would have loved. In late April, George called with news about the insurance money. The company had issued an apology and a settlement check for an additional $10,000 as compensation for their mishandling of the case. "It's yours," George said. "You're entitled to it." Rachel divided it immediately. $5,000 to the Freedom Riders Charity Fund, $2,000 to Katie's college savings, $3,000 to her own emergency fund. The giving felt as good as the saving. May brought Rachel's 21st birthday. Beth threw a party at the bakery, inviting the entire Freedom Riders family. 40 people showed up. Some Rachel knew well, others she'd only met once or twice. But they were all there to celebrate her, to mark this milestone, to show they cared. Bear presented her with a gift from the whole club. A professional baker's knife set, expensive and beautiful. "For culinary school," he said. "And for the bakery you'll run someday." "My own bakery." Rachel laughed. "That's ambitious." "Beth's serious about that second location," Bear said. "She's thinking in about 3 years, once you've finished school and gotten some more experience." She wants you to manage it. Maybe even be a partner in it someday. The possibility took Rachel's breath away. Her own bakery, a business, true independence built on skills and hard work and the foundation this community had given her. I'd love that. I'd love that so much. Katie gave her a homemade card. Inside, she'd written, "Thank you for never giving up on us. Thank you for being brave enough to ask for help. Thank you for being the best big sister in the world. Love you forever." Rachel cried reading it. Happy tears. Grateful tears. Tears that came from realizing how far they'd come, how much they'd survived, how good life could be when you let people love you. That night, after everyone left and Rachel was cleaning up with Beth, she said what had been on her heart for months. "I want to do more. More than just helping individual families when they come to us. I want to create something that reaches people before they get as desperate as I was." "What are you thinking?" Beth asked. "A program. Maybe through the Freedom Riders, maybe separate. Something that connects people in crisis with resources before they are homeless. Before they are living in their cars. When they first start struggling. Prevention instead of just rescue." Beth's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant. Talk to Linda. This is exactly the kind of expansion she's been wanting to do. With your experience and her expertise, you could build something really impactful." Rachel met with Linda the following week. They talked for hours about possibilities. A hotline for people in crisis. A database of resources. A network of volunteers who could do quick interventions. Financial counseling. Job placement help. All the things that could catch people before they fell through the cracks. "We'd need funding," Linda said. "But with the publicity from your article and the donations that came in, we've got seed money. If we can write a good grant proposal, we could get this started by fall." "I'll help write it," Rachel offered. "I know what people need because I've been there. And I've watched the Freedom Riders help dozens of families now. I understand the model." They worked on the proposal throughout June. Rachel balanced culinary school, her bakery job, the proposal writing, and checking in on the families she'd helped mentor. It was busy, but it was purpose-driven. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was making a difference. Jennifer's family stabilized beautifully. By July, Jennifer was managing the restaurant where she worked. Her kids were happy, healthy, thriving. She came to Rachel one afternoon with tears in her eyes and an envelope. "What's this?" Rachel asked. "Money. $500. I know it's not much compared to what you gave to help us, but it's what I can afford right now. I want to contribute to the Freedom Riders Fund. I want to help the next family." Rachel took the envelope, moved beyond words. "This is perfect. This is exactly how it's supposed to work." "You showed me that," Jennifer said. "You showed me that accepting help isn't the end of the story. It's the middle. The end is becoming someone who helps others. I'm ready to be that person now." In August, the grant proposal was accepted. $50,000 to launch the Crisis Prevention Program through the Freedom Riders. Linda would run it, and Rachel would serve on the board while finishing school. They'd start accepting clients in September. Rachel's second year at the bakery started with a raise and more responsibility. Caroline officially named her assistant head baker. "You've earned it," Caroline said. "You're one of the best bakers I've trained. Fast, creative, reliable. Everything a head baker needs." Katie started her junior year of high school. She was in honors classes, active in drama club, volunteering with the Freedom Riders Youth Program. She'd grown so much in the past 10 months. From scared and broken to confident and purposeful. One evening in late August, the sisters sat on their couch eating ice cream and watching TV. A commercial came on for life insurance, and Katie made a face. "I hate those commercials. They remind me of everything with Dad." "Me too," Rachel admitted. "But you know what? I think Dad would be proud of how we handled it. How we survived it." "We didn't just survive," Katie said. "We grew. We became better people because of it." "Because of the people who helped us," Rachel corrected. "The Freedom Riders. Beth. Bay. Everyone who decided we were worth saving." Katie was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "When I graduate high school, I want to do a gap year volunteering with organizations like the Freedom Riders. Before college, I want to spend a year helping people. That's a beautiful idea, Rachel said. You inspired it. Watching you give money to Maria, watching you mentor Jennifer, watching you build this prevention program. You showed me what it means to pay it forward. I want to do that too. Rachel hugged her sister, overwhelmed with pride and love. They'd been so broken 10 months ago. So lost and scared and desperate. Now they were whole again. Not perfect, still carrying their grief for their father, still working through their trauma. But whole. Healed enough to help others heal. The fall brought new rhythms. Culinary school intensified. The crisis prevention program launched with Rachel attending the first several client meetings, using her story to help people understand they weren't alone. The bakery stayed busy, and Rachel's skills continued to grow. In October, almost exactly a year after that desperate night in the gas station parking lot, the Freedom Riders held their annual charity ride. Hundreds of bikers participated, riding through the Columbia River Gorge to raise money for families in crisis. Rachel and Katie rode in the support van, helping with logistics, talking to donors, sharing their story. At the end of the ride, Beg gathered everyone for announcements. He talked about the families helped over the past year. 23 families housed. 32 jobs secured. Over $200,000 raised and distributed. Then he called Rachel and Katie up to the front. These two, he said, his voice carrying over the crowd, represent everything we're trying to do. We helped them when they had nothing. They accepted that help with grace and gratitude. And now, less than a year later, they are helping others. Rachel's on the board of our new crisis prevention program. She mentors families. She volunteers. She gives financially. Katie volunteers with our youth program. Together, they've turned their pain into purpose. That's what this community is all about. The crowd applauded, and Rachel felt tears streaming down her face. A year ago, she'd been asking for spare change, convinced she and Katie would freeze in their car, or worse. Now she stood in front of hundreds of people as an example of what was possible when kindness met desperation. After the ceremony, a young woman approached Rachel nervously. She was maybe 18, with scared eyes and a backpack that looked like it held everything she owned. I read your article, the girl said quietly. The one from last year. I've been living in my car for 3 weeks. I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? Rachel took the girl's hand and led her to Linda. This is Emma, Rachel said. She needs help. She's ready to accept it. Let's show her what this community can do. As Linda began talking to Emma, explaining resources and options, Rachel stepped back and watched. The circle continuing. Someone in crisis reaching out. The community responding. Help being given freely. And someday, maybe a year from now, Emma would be standing where Rachel was now. Helping someone else. Paying it forward. Katie appeared beside Rachel. That could have been us. If we hadn't met Bear that night. I know, Rachel said. That's why we do this. That's why we help. Because we remember. We remember what it felt like to have nothing and no one. And we make sure other people don't stay in that darkness any longer than necessary. They stood together, watching Emma's story begin the way theirs had. With desperation meeting kindness. With community embracing a stranger. WI1TH hope replacing despair. The circle turning, endless and beautiful, powered by people who'd been broken and decided to use their healing to help others mend. That night, driving home in her car, with Katie beside her and a full life waiting, Rachel thought about that moment in the parking lot. That moment when she'd gathered every ounce of courage to approach a stranger and ask for help. That moment had changed everything. She'd asked for spare change. She'd received a family. She'd found a community. She'd discovered her purpose. And now she got to be the one offering help to the next desperate soul who needed it. The cycle of kindness. The circle of hope. The family you choose when your birth family can't be there. That's what the Freedom Riders had given her. And that's what she'd spend the rest of her life giving to others. Some stories ended with happily ever after. This one ended with happily ever forward. Moving toward the future, carrying the past's lessons, helping others along the way. That was the real happy ending. Not perfection, but purpose. Not independence, but community. Not forgetting the pain, but transforming it into something beautiful. Rachel and Katie Morrison had been saved by a biker who saw their desperation and decided to care. Now they were becoming the people who would save others. The circle continued. The kindness multiplied. The hope spread. And it all started with a hungry girl asking for spare change, and a generous man who gave her everything instead. November arrived with cold rain and the anniversary of the day that changed everything. Rachel woke on the 11th and lay in bed for a moment, thinking about where she'd been exactly 1 year ago. Desperate, freezing, down to $3 and a prayer. She looked around her bedroom now. Warm, comfortable, hairs. The contrast made her breathless. Katie knocked on her door. You remember what today is? I remember. Bear wants us to come to the clubhouse tonight. He said it's important. Rachel dressed for work, her mind on the past year. Everything that had happened. Everything that had changed. At the bakery, Beth had baked a special cake decorated with a motorcycle and the words 1 year of new beginnings. The whole crew sang to Rachel when she arrived, celebrating not her birthday but her rebirth. You've come so far, Caroline said, hugging her. From that scared girl who could barely look me in the eye to assistant head baker who's teaching classes at culinary school. I'm so proud of you. The day at the bakery was busy but good. Rachel moved through her tasks with confidence. Her hands skilled now, her knowledge deep. She was good at this work. Really good. And she loved it. That was the gift the Freedom Riders had given her. Not just survival, but the chance to discover what she was meant to do. That evening, Rachel and Katie drove to the clubhouse. The parking lot was full of motorcycles and cars. Inside, the main room was packed with people. Not just the Freedom Riders, but families they'd helped. Jennifer and her kids were there. Emma, the girl from the charity ride, now 2 months into her own recovery. Marcus and his son. Sophie and her foster family. Dozens of people whose lives had been changed by this community. Bear stood at the front of the room. When he saw Rachel and Katie enter, he smiled. Perfect timing. Come on up here, girls. They made their way to the front, confused but trusting. Bear put a hand on Rachel's shoulder and addressed the crowd. 1 year ago today, Rachel Morrison approached me in a gas station parking lot and asked for spare change. She was desperate, scared, and convinced her world was ending. Some of you know the feeling. A lot of you in this room have been exactly where she was. Rock bottom with nowhere to go but up or out. He looked at Rachel. This young woman had the courage to ask for help. And this community had the privilege of providing it. But here's what makes Rachel special. She didn't just take what was offered and disappear. She became part of this family. She started helping others almost immediately. She gave money to Maria when she needed to escape. She mentored Jennifer and her kids. She helped build the crisis prevention program that's already helped 15 families in just 3 months. She turned her pain into purpose faster than almost anyone I've ever seen. Bear pulled out an envelope. Rachel, the Freedom Riders want to honor your first year with us. This is a scholarship for the rest of your culinary school tuition, so you don't have to worry about that expense. And this, he pulled out a second envelope, is a letter of partnership. Beth wants to officially make you a partner in the second bakery location we're opening next year. 10% ownership, with the option to buy more as you're able. You'll manage it, run it, make it yours. Rachel couldn't speak. Partnership, ownership, a piece of a business. Security for her and Katie's future. She took the envelopes with shaking hands. I don't deserve this, she whispered. You owned it, Beth said, stepping up beside Bear. Every bit of it. Through your hard work, your dedication, your kindness to others. You've proven what we knew from the start. That you're remarkable. Katie was crying. The crowd was applauding. Rachel felt overwhelmed by gratitude and love and the weight of how much her life had changed in exactly 365 days. Linda stepped forward next. We have one more thing. The crisis prevention program has been so successful that we got another grant. A big one. $200,000 over 3 years to expand statewide. Rachel, we want to hire you as assistant director. Part-time while you finish school, full-time after. You'd help families across Oregon avoid the desperation you experienced. Interested? Yes, Rachel managed. Absolutely yes. The celebration that followed was joyful and loud. People shared stories of their own recoveries, their own transformations. Emma talked about starting community college in January. Jennifer announced she'd been promoted to restaurant manager. Marcus revealed he was getting married to a woman he'd met through the church. Story after story of hope overcoming despair, of community catching people when they fell. Later, Rachel found herself outside with Bear, both of them needing air after the emotional evening. The November night was cold, reminding her of that parking lot encounter exactly 1 year ago. I think about that night all the time, Bear said quietly. I almost didn't stop at that gas station. Almost drove past it. But something told me to pull in. And there you are. I was so scared to approach you, Rachel admitted. You looked terrifying. Bear laughed. Most people think that, until they talk to us and realize we're just people who ride motorcycles and try to do good. You saved my life, Rachel said. You and Beth and this whole community. I'd be dead or worse if you hadn't helped. You saved your own life by asking, Bear corrected. That took courage most people don't have. A lot of folks would have just given up. Frozen in that car. Called it fate. You fought. You asked. You accepted help when it was offered. That's why you're here now, thriving. Because you were brave enough to believe you deserved better. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Rachel said, I want to ask you something. About Melissa. Bear tensed slightly but nodded. Do you think she'd be proud of what you've built here? This community, this mission? Bear's eyes got misty. Yeah, I think she would. Melissa was the kindest kid. Always wanting to help people, always seeing the good in everyone. After she died, Beth and I could have let the grief destroy us. We almost did. But then we realized we could honor her by becoming the kind of people she would have been proud of. By helping others the way she would have if she'd lived. She'd be proud, Rachel said with certainty. Because you're changing lives. You changed mine. You gave me a future. That matters, Bear. More than I can ever express. Helping you girls has healed something in me, Bear admitted. Something I didn't know was still broken. Watching you and Katie thrive, it feels like proof that good things still happen. That kindness still matters. That the world isn't just random cruelty. Rachel hugged him, this big tough biker who'd saved a life and become like a father to her. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me. For caring. For giving us a family. Bear hugged her back, his voice rough. Thank you for letting us. For trusting us. For becoming exactly who we hoped you'd be. Inside, the party continued. Katie was teaching some of the younger kids a dance from her school play. Beth was talking to Jennifer about catering opportunities. Linda was introducing Emma to Sophie, connecting people who could support each other. The community doing what it did best. Caring for its own. Rachel watched it all and felt such overwhelming gratitude. A year ago, she'd had nothing. Now she had everything that mattered. Home, family, purpose, security, hope. All because she'd been brave enough to ask for help and wise enough to accept it when offered. The Freedom Riders annual planning meeting happened the following week. Rachel attended as a board member of the Crisis Prevention Program. They discussed next year's goals. More families to help. More resources to distribute. The expansion of the prevention program across Oregon. Opening the second bakery location. Increasing their volunteer base. We helped 75 families this year, Linda reported. That's a 50% increase from last year. The Crisis Prevention Program has seen 20 families in 3 months, and we've prevented homelessness for 18 of them. The early intervention model is working. Bear looked at Rachel. Your story brought attention and resources. The article Amanda wrote, the way you've shared your experience, it's made people want to help. You've been the face of our mission this year, whether you meant to be or not. I'm glad, Rachel said. If my story helps others get help faster, then sharing it was worth the vulnerability. They discussed the charity ride plan for spring. It would be bigger than ever, with the goal of raising $300,000. Rachel and Katie volunteered to help organize it, using their connections from the past year to bring in sponsors and participants. December brought holiday preparations. The bakery stayed busy with orders for parties and gatherings. Rachel worked long hours but didn't mind. The work was satisfying, and the money was good. She'd saved enough to buy Katie real Christmas presents this year. Nothing extravagant, but thoughtful things her sister wanted. Beth's Bakery threw a holiday party for all the employees and their families. Rachel invited Jennifer and Emma, who'd both become close friends. They exchanged small gifts and shared a meal and laughed about the year they'd all survived. To second chances, Jennifer toasted, raising her glass. And to the people brave enough to give them. To asking for help, Emma added. And to communities that answer. To the Freedom Riders, Rachel finished. And to paying it forward. They clinked glasses and drank, three women who'd all been desperate once, who'd all been saved by the same community, who were all working now to save others. Christmas Eve, Rachel and Katie attended the service at Pastor Bill's church. The Freedom Riders filled an entire section, bikers in leather vests sitting beside elderly couples and young families. The sermon was about unexpected grace, about strangers showing kindness, about miracles that looked like ordinary people doing extraordinary things. After the service, Pastor Bill pulled Rachel aside. "Your story has inspired this whole congregation. We've started a benevolence fund specifically to help families in crisis, modeled on what the Freedom Riders do. We've already raised $15,000. Would you be willing to help us distribute it wisely?" "I'd be honored," Rachel said. Christmas morning, Rachel and Katie woke in their apartment and exchanged gifts. Rachel gave Katie a laptop for school. Katie gave Rachel a professional chef's jacket with her name embroidered on it. They cooked breakfast together, watched movies, and video called some of the Freedom Riders to wish them happy holidays. In the afternoon, they drove to Beth and Bear's house for dinner. 20 people were there, a mix of Freedom Riders and families they'd helped. The meal was loud and joyful, everyone talking over each other, kids running around, the kind of chaos that meant family. After dinner, Bear stood and clinked his glass for attention. "I want to say something. This past year has been the best year of my life since Melissa died. And it's because of the families we've helped, the lives we've changed. But especially because of Rachel and Katie Morrison, who reminded me why we do this work. Who showed me that helping others really does heal the helper as much as the helped. Thank you, girls, for being part of our family." "Thank you for making us part of it," Rachel said, her voice thick with emotion. As the evening wound down, Rachel stepped outside for air. The winter night was clear and cold, stars visible above Portland's city lights. She thought about her father, about how much she missed him, about how much she wished he could see what she and Katie had built from the ashes of their loss. But maybe he could see. Maybe somewhere, he was proud of them. Proud that they'd survived. Proud that they'd accepted help. Proud that they were using their second chance to help others get second chances too. Katie came out and stood beside her. "What are you thinking about?" "Dad. Wishing he was here." "Me too. But I think he'd be happy about everything. About the Freedom Riders, about our apartment, about your partnership in the bakery. About how we didn't give up." "We almost did," Rachel admitted. "That night in the parking lot, I almost didn't ask Bear for help. I almost just accepted that we were going to freeze or starve or end up God knows where. If I hadn't been brave for 5 seconds, none of this would have happened." "But you were brave," Katie said. "You saved us by asking. And then Bear saved us by answering. And now we get to save others. That's the best ending, don't you think?" "Not an ending," Rachel corrected. "A beginning. This is just the start of what we're going to do with the rest of our lives." They stood together under the stars, two sisters who'd survived the worst and found the best. Who'd learned that asking for help was strength, not weakness. That accepting kindness was wisdom, not shame. That community could heal wounds nothing else could touch. Inside, the party continued. Their family, chosen rather than blood, but no less real. The Freedom Riders, the bakery crew, the families they'd helped, all connected by threads of kindness and grace and the willingness to see each other's humanity. Rachel had asked for spare change. She'd received a fortune. Not in money, though that had come too, but in love, in purpose, in belonging, in the knowledge that she mattered, that her life had value, that her story could help others write better stories for themselves. That was the real gift. Not the apartment or the job or the partnership or the money. The real gift was knowing she wasn't alone, would never be alone again, because she'd found her people, her community, her family, and that was worth more than any amount of spare change could ever buy. The new year started with momentum. Rachel threw herself into culinary school, the bakery partnership planning, and her work with the crisis prevention program. Katie continued to excel in school and expanded her volunteer work. They'd found their rhythm, their purpose, their place in the world. Then February brought unexpected news. Amanda Foster called Rachel on a Tuesday morning. "Have you seen the news? Your story has been picked up nationally. The Today Show wants to do a segment on you and the Freedom Riders." Rachel almost dropped her phone. National television. They are calling it a good news story America needs. The article went viral on social media last week. People are sharing it everywhere, talking about how communities should work. The Freedom Riders donation page has been flooded. You're going to need to prepare for attention. The attention came fast. By the end of the week, Rachel had received interview requests from 3 major networks, 2 podcasts, and a publisher who wanted her to write a book about her experience. The Freedom Riders website crashed from traffic. Donations poured in at a rate Linda couldn't keep up with. Bear called an emergency meeting of the core leadership team. Rachel attended, still processing what was happening. "We've received over $200,000 in donations in the past week," Linda reported. "And we're getting calls from people across the country asking how to start similar programs in their communities." "This is bigger than us now," Bear said. "Rachel's story has touched something. People want to help. They want to believe communities can work this way. We need to figure out how to scale this responsibly." They spent 3 hours strategizing. How to handle the money. How to respond to inquiries. How to protect Rachel and Katie from invasive media attention while still sharing the story that was inspiring so many people. "I don't want to be famous," Rachel said. "I just wanted to help people." "You are helping people," Beth assured her. "But now you're helping them on a much bigger scale. Think about all the desperate souls who will see your story and know it's okay to ask for help. Think about all the communities that will start their own programs based on our model. You're creating a movement, Rachel, whether you intended to or not." The Today Show interview aired in early March. Rachel and Bear sat on the couch together, telling the story of that parking lot encounter. Rachel shared her desperation, her fear, the courage it took to ask. Bear explained the Freedom Riders' mission, their belief in community care, their commitment to helping without judgment. The segment ended with a call to action, directing viewers to the Freedom Riders website and to resources for starting similar programs. Within hours, the website had 500,000 visitors. By the end of the day, another $500,000 had been donated. Rachel's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from people she'd never met, sharing their own stories of desperation and recovery. Thank you messages from families the Freedom Riders had helped over the years. Interview requests from media outlets worldwide. It was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at once. Katie found it all hilarious. "My sister is famous for asking a biker for spare change. That's the best origin story ever." But the attention brought complications too. Rachel's old landlord from the house they'd lost reached out, suddenly wanting to reconnect now that Rachel was successful. The hospital that had pursued them for medical debt sent a letter congratulating her recovery and asking if she'd speak at a fundraiser. People who'd ignored them in their desperation now wanted to be associated with their success. "This is the ugly part," Bear warned. "When you're nobody, nobody cares. When you're somebody, everyone wants a piece. You have to learn to say no." Rachel learned quickly. She said no to the landlord, no to the hospital, no to book deals that would exploit her trauma without adequately compensating her. She said yes to speaking at conferences about community care, yes to consulting with organizations wanting to replicate the Freedom Riders model, yes to things that served the mission of helping others. One opportunity, though, was harder to decide on. A producer from a major streaming service wanted to make a documentary about the Freedom Riders. It would follow several families being helped over the course of a year, showing the process from desperation to recovery. It could reach millions of people, Linda said during a board meeting. It could inspire hundreds of communities to start similar programs. But it would also mean cameras and scrutiny and loss of privacy for the families involved. Rachel thought about it carefully. We should do it, but with strict conditions. Families have to consent enthusiastically. They can't be pressured. Their identities can be protected if they want. And all proceeds from the documentary go to the charity fund, not to individuals. This isn't about making money off people's pain. It's about showing how communities can heal it. They negotiated carefully with the production company. The documentary would take 8 months to film, following 4 families including a new one just starting their journey. Rachel would be featured explaining her experience, but the focus would be on the community effort, not individual stories of trauma. Filming started in April. Cameras followed the Freedom Riders as they responded to crisis calls, helped families move into housing, connected people with resources. They captured the support group meetings, the charity rides, the everyday moments of community members checking on each other. One family they featured was a young couple, Nick and Stephanie, with a newborn baby. Nick had lost his job when the company he worked for went bankrupt. Stephanie was on maternity leave with no income. They were facing eviction and had nowhere to go. Rachel mentored Stephanie, sharing her own story, helping her navigate the assistance process. She watched the Freedom Riders mobilize for this family the same way they'd mobilized for her 18 months ago. Housing, job placement, baby supplies, medical care. Everything needed, provided freely. I felt so ashamed asking for help, Stephanie told Rachel during one film conversation. Like I'd failed somehow. I know that feeling, Rachel said. But here's what I learned. Needing help isn't failure. It's being human. We all need each other. That's not weakness. It's how we're designed. By June, Nick had a new job. Stephanie was back to work part-time. Their baby was healthy and thriving. The family was stable, saved from disaster by a community that had decided to care. The cameras captured their transformation, their gratitude, their commitment to pay it forward someday. The second bakery location was set to open in July. Rachel spent months preparing, working with Beth on everything from menu development to staff hiring to interior design. They decided to call it Second Chances Bakery, a name that honored the mission behind it. Every employee here will be someone getting a fresh start, Beth explained. Just like at the original location. We hire people others might overlook. People with gaps in their resumes, people rebuilding after crisis, people who need someone to believe in them. Rachel hired 6 employees for the new location. Emma, who'd been helped by the Freedom Riders 8 months ago and was now stable. A man named Robert who'd aged out of the foster system and needed a chance. A woman named Alice who was recovering from addiction. 3 others, all with stories of hardship and resilience. I know what it's like to need a chance, Rachel told her new team during their first meeting. This bakery exists because people gave me one. Now I get to give chances to you. We're going to work hard, we're going to support each other, and we're going to create something beautiful together. The grand opening in July was attended by hundreds of people. The Freedom Riders, of course, but also community members, local politicians, media, and families who'd been helped over the past years. Bear cut the ribbon alongside Rachel, both of them grinning at the cameras. This is what happens when you invest in people, Bear said in his speech. 18 months ago, Rachel had nothing. Today, she's a business owner, a community leader, and a mentor to others. That's the power of believing in someone long enough for them to believe in themselves. Rachel's speech was simpler. Thank you to everyone who refused to let me give up, who saw me at my worst and decided I was worth saving. This bakery is my way of paying that forward. Every person who works here, every person who walks through these doors, they're going to feel what I felt that first day at Beth's Bakery. They are going to feel seen, valued, and believed in. That's the real recipe we're serving here. The bakery was an instant success. Lines wrapped around the block the first week. Reviews praised not just the food but the mission, the heart behind it. Local businesses started ordering catering services. Schools wanted to bring classes for tours and talks about second chances and community support. Rachel was exhausted but fulfilled. She worked 12-hour days managing the new location, still took classes 3 nights a week at culinary school, and somehow found time to mentor new families through the crisis prevention program. Katie joked that her sister had become a superhero. Not a superhero, Rachel corrected. Just someone who remembers what rock bottom feels like and refuses to let others stay there. In August, something unexpected happened. A woman walked into Second Chance's bakery asking for Rachel. She was maybe 40, well-dressed, with a briefcase and nervous energy. "I'm Diana Sterling," the woman said when Rachel came to the front. "I'm a lawyer. I specialize in medical debt cases. I read your story, and I think I can help with something you might not know about." They sat in Rachel's small office, and Diana pulled out documents. "Your father's medical debt. The hospital claimed it was $8,000 to $7,000. I've reviewed the billing records. They overcharged by at least $40,000. Double billed, charged for services never ended, inflated costs beyond reasonable rates. It's fraud, Rachel. And more importantly, since you were never legally responsible for that debt anyway, the hospital's aggressive collection attempts against you constitute harassment." Rachel stared at the papers. "What does this mean?" "It means you have grounds for a lawsuit. We could sue the hospital for fraudulent billing practices and harassment. We'd likely settle out of court for a significant amount. Money you could use to expand your crisis prevention program, help more families, grow your bakery empire." "How much are we talking about?" Rachel asked, her mind racing. "Conservative estimate, $500,000. Could be more if they want to avoid a public trial." Rachel sat back in her chair, processing. $500,000. That money could help hundreds of families. Could fund the crisis prevention program for years. Could open more bakery locations, hiring people who needed chances. What would I have to do? "Let me represent you. We'd file the lawsuit, go through discovery, probably settle within 6 months. It would mean reliving some painful memories, but it could mean huge benefits for the work you're doing now." Rachel thought about her father, about the bills that had stolen their home, their security, their peace in his final months, about how the hospital had made everything worse instead of better, about using that pain to create something good. "Let's do it," Rachel said. "But I want any settlement money to go directly to a non-profit fund. I don't want it personally. I want it to help others." Diana smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. Let's make them pay for what they did, and let's use that money to heal the system that broke you." The lawsuit was filed in September. The hospital's legal team reached out immediately, offering to settle quietly. Diana negotiated hard. By October, they had an agreement. $750,000 paid into the newly created Morrison Family Crisis Relief Fund, a nonprofit Rachel and Linda established specifically to help families facing medical debt and job loss. "This is justice," Linda said when the check cleared. "Using the money from the system that hurt you to help others the system is hurting. It's perfect." The documentary premiered in November, almost exactly 2 years after that fateful night in the parking lot. It was called The Freedom Riders: How One Community is Saving Lives One Family at a Time. Rachel hosted a viewing party at the new bakery, inviting everyone who'd been part of their journey. The documentary was beautiful. It showed the desperation families faced, the community rallying to help, the transformation that happened when people felt truly supported. Rachel's story anchored it, but the film made clear this wasn't about one person. It was about a movement, a way of thinking, a commitment to caring for each other. The response was overwhelming. Within days, communities across America were contacting the Freedom Riders asking how to start similar programs. The donation page raised over $2 million. Requests for Rachel to speak at conferences and workshops came from every state. Beck called another emergency meeting. "We need to create a training program, a way to teach others how to replicate what we do. Rachel, Linda, Beth, this has to be you three. You understand the model better than anyone." They spent the next months developing a comprehensive guide. How to assess family needs. How to mobilize community resources. How to provide help without creating dependency. How to empower people to eventually help others. All the lessons learned over years of trial and error, distilled into a replicable system. By December, they'd launched the Freedom Riders National Network. 50 communities across America had signed up to start chapters. Rachel conducted webinars twice a week, training volunteers, answering questions, sharing the principles that made the model work. "We're creating a movement," Linda said during one late-night planning session. "This is bigger than Portland now. This is a national shift in how we think about helping people in crisis." "It's how it should have always been," Rachel said. "People taking care of people. Community mattering more than systems. That's not revolutionary. It's just human." Christmas came, and Rachel found herself overwhelmed with gratitude. 2 years ago, she'd been freezing in a car, desperate and scared. Now she was a business owner, a non-profit director, a national advocate for community care. She had a beautiful apartment, a thriving sister, financial security, and a purpose that filled her soul. Katie was applying to colleges, talking about studying social work or nonprofit management. "I want to do what you do," she told Rachel. "Help people. Build communities. Make a difference." "You already are," Rachel said. "Every time you volunteer, every time you mentor younger kids, every time you share our story, you're already making a difference." At the Freedom Riders Christmas party, Bear pulled Rachel aside. "I have something for you." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check. $25,000. "What is this?" "We took a vote," Bear said. "The documentary generated revenue. We decided you should have part of it. You told the story that made all this possible. That money is yours to use however you want." Rachel's first instinct was to refuse it, to say it should go to the charity fund. But then she thought about Katie's college expenses coming up, about wanting to take her sister on a real vacation, something they'd never been able to afford, about maybe, finally, doing something just for themselves. "Thank you," she said. "I'll use it wisely." "Use some of it for fun," Bear corrected. "You've earned the right to enjoy life a little. You don't have to sacrifice everything for the mission." That advice stuck with her. She'd been so focused on helping others, on paying forward the kindness she'd received, that she'd forgotten to actually live, to enjoy the life she'd worked so hard to build. In January, Rachel and Katie took a week off and went to Hawaii. Their first real vacation ever. They swam in warm water, ate good food, laughed until they cried, and just existed together without crisis or urgency or responsibility. "This is nice," Katie said, lying on a beach towel in the sun. "Just being normal for a while." "We've earned normal," Rachel agreed. "We've done the hard work. Now we get to enjoy some of the rewards." Flying home, Rachel thought about balance. About working hard but not burning out. About helping others but not losing herself. About being grateful for what she'd built while still pushing to build more. She thought about her father. How he'd taught her that asking for help was brave, that accepting kindness was wise, that life was about more than just surviving. He'd been gone for over 2 years now, but his wisdom lived on in everything Rachel did. "Dad would have loved this," Katie said quietly, as if reading Rachel's mind. "He always wanted to take us to Hawaii." "He did. And I think he'd be proud that we finally made it. That we didn't just survive his death. We thrived because of everything he taught us." Back in Portland, Rachel threw herself into the next phase of expansion. 3 more bakery locations were planned over the next 2 years. The Freedom Riders National Network had grown to 100 chapters. The Morrison Family Crisis Relief Fund was helping families across Oregon and expanding into Washington and California. In February, Rachel was invited to speak at a national conference on poverty and community solutions. She stood on stage in front of 2,000 people and told her story. The desperation, the asking, the receiving, the rebuilding, the paying forward. She talked about what communities could do when they decided to care, when they chose to see people's humanity instead of their circumstances. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, dozens of people approached her with their own stories. Some had been helped by Freedom Riders chapters. Some wanted to start programs in their communities. Some just wanted to thank her for showing them it was okay to ask for help when they needed it. One woman, probably 60, gripped Rachel's hand with tears streaming down her face. "I've been homeless for 3 years. Too ashamed to ask for help. But hearing you say it's brave, not shameful, it changed something in me. I'm going to ask. I'm going to let people help me. Rachel hugged her. Please do. You deserve help. You deserve community. You deserve a second chance. That interaction stayed with Rachel for days. That was why she did this. Not for the recognition or the success or even the satisfaction of helping, but for those moments when someone's entire perspective shifted. When shame became courage. When isolation became connection. When despair became hope. Those transformations were worth everything. In March, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, Rachel was working in her office at Second Chances Bakery when Katie burst through the door, waving an envelope. I got in. I got into Portland State with a full academic scholarship, and I got accepted into their social work program. Rachel jumped up and hugged her sister, both of them crying happy tears. Katie was going to college. Katie was going to build her own career helping people. Katie was going to be okay. Dad would be so proud, Rachel said. He'd be proud of both of us, Katie corrected. Look at what we've built from nothing. Look at how we survived and then thrived and then helped others do the same. We did that, Rachel. We took the worst thing that ever happened to us and turned it into something beautiful. Rachel thought about those words later. Turning tragedy into beauty. Transforming pain into purpose. Using the worst moments to fuel the best work. That's what the Freedom Riders had taught her. That's what she was teaching others now. That evening, Rachel drove to the gas station where it all started. The same parking lot, the same pumps, probably the same cracks in the pavement. She stood where she'd stood that freezing November night 2.5 years ago. Where she'd been desperate and terrified and convinced she was out of options. She thought about the girl she'd been then. 19 years old. Broken by grief, drowning in circumstances beyond her control. So scared to ask for help. So certain she'd be rejected or ignored or worse. Then she thought about the woman she was now. 21 years old, business owner, non-profit director, mentor, speaker. Someone who'd taken a terrible situation and built something meaningful from it. Someone who asked for spare change and received a fortune. Not in money, though that came too. But in love, purpose, community, and the knowledge that she mattered. Rachel pulled out her phone and called Bear. You okay? He answered, concern in his voice. I'm perfect. I'm at the gas station. Where we met. I wanted to call and say thank you one more time. For seeing me. For caring. For changing everything. Bear was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Rachel, you changed everything. I was just the door opener. You walked through it. You did the hard work. You accepted the help and used it to become someone extraordinary. That's all you, kid. It's all us, Rachel corrected. It's community. It's the circle. It's people caring about people. That's what saved me. That's what I'll spend the rest of my life giving to others. I know you will. You already are. After hanging up, Rachel stood in that parking lot for a few more minutes. She thought about all the desperate people out there right now, facing their own rock bottoms, convinced no one cared. She thought about all the communities mobilizing to help them, inspired by the Freedom Riders model. She thought about the circle of kindness spreading across the country, catching people before they fell, lifting them up, empowering them to lift others. It had started with one desperate girl asking for spare change. It had become a movement. And it was just beginning. Spring arrived in Portland with cherry blossoms and longer days. Rachel woke each morning in her apartment, drove to one of her bakery locations, spent her days managing teams and mentoring employees, and fell into bed exhausted but satisfied. Life had become beautifully routine, punctuated by moments of profound meaning. In April, Rachel graduated from culinary school with honors. Katie and the entire Freedom Riders family attended the ceremony. Bear presented her with a bouquet of flowers, and Beth cried like a proud mother. Caroline announced that Rachel had been the best student she'd taught in 15 years. You're not just technically skilled, Caroline said during the reception. You understand that baking is about more than food. It's about nourishment, connection, care. You bake with heart. That's what makes you exceptional. The next week, Rachel officially became a full partner in Second Chances Bakery, increasing her ownership stake to 25%. Beth insisted on celebrating with a party, where she announced plans for 2 more locations opening by the end of the year. Rachel will oversee all expansion, Beth told the crowd. She's proven she can manage operations, develop talent, and maintain the mission. She's ready to lead. Ready to lead. Rachel thought about those words. 2.5 years ago, she'd barely been ready to survive. Now people trusted her with businesses, with employees' livelihoods, with carrying forward a mission of giving second chances. The transformation still took her breath away sometimes. The crisis prevention program continued to grow. They'd helped over 200 families in the past year, preventing homelessness for 85% of them. The model was working. Early intervention, comprehensive support, community engagement. It saved families and cost less than emergency interventions after people hit bottom. We're proving what you've been saying all along, Linda told Rachel during a board meeting. That prevention works better than rescue. That catching people before they fall is more effective and more humane than waiting until they are desperate. Other cities were replicating the model now. The Freedom Riders National Network had grown to 250 chapters across 40 states. Each chapter adapted the approach to their community's specific needs, but the core principles remained the same. See people's humanity. Provide help without judgment. Empower recipients to eventually help others. In May, Rachel received a call that surprised her. The governor's office wanted her to serve on a state task force examining poverty and community solutions. She'd be the youngest member, representing lived experience and innovative approaches. This is policy work, the governor's aide explained. We want to change how Oregon approaches poverty. You'll model with the Freedom Riders. It's exactly the kind of community-based solution we should be supporting at the state level. Rachel accepted, knowing it would mean more work, more time, more responsibility. But it would also mean influence. The ability to shape policy so that others didn't fall through the cracks the way she had. That was worth the extra effort. Katie finished her junior year with a 4.0 GPA. She'd been accepted into an early college program at Portland State, meaning she'd start taking college classes while finishing high school. Her dream of becoming a social worker was taking concrete shape. I want to work with teenagers in crisis, Katie told Rachel one evening. Kids who've lost parents, who are facing homelessness, who don't know where to turn. I want to be for them what the Freedom Riders were for us. You're going to be amazing at it, Rachel said with absolute certainty. In June, something unexpected happened. A man walked into Second Chance's bakery asking for Rachel. He was probably 55, wearing a business suit, carrying a folder. When Rachel came to the front, he extended his hand. I'm David Morrison, your father's brother, your uncle. Rachel stared at him, her world tilting. I don't have an uncle. Dad said he was an only child. That's not quite true, David said gently. Your father and I had a falling out 20 years ago. We stopped speaking. I didn't even know he died until recently. I saw the documentary, saw your name, realized you were Frank's daughter. I've been looking for you since. They sat in Rachel's office, and David told a story Rachel had never heard. Her father had an older brother. They'd fought about something stupid when Rachel was a baby. Pride and stubbornness kept them apart for 2 decades. David had tried to reconnect several times but never pushed hard enough. By the time he saw the documentary, it was too late to make amends with his brother. But it's not too late for me to know my nieces, David said. If you'll let me. Rachel didn't know how to feel. Angry that this man hadn't been there when they needed him. Curious about this connection to her father. Cautious about letting someone new into their carefully built life. I need to think about this, Rachel said. And I need to talk to Katie. We've been burned by people who disappeared when things got hard. I need to know you're not going to do that. I understand, David said. I'm not asking for instant trust. I'm asking for a chance. Let me prove I'm here to stay. Over the next weeks, Rachel and Katie met with David several times. He told them stories about their father as a young man. He shared photos they'd never seen. He explained the fight that had separated them and his regret for letting pride win over family. Your father was stubborn, David said with a sad smile. But so was I. We both wasted 20 years on something that didn't matter. I don't want to waste any more time. I want to know you girls. I want to be part of your lives, if you'll have me. Katie was more open than Rachel to the idea. His family. That matters, doesn't it? Family is who shows up, Rachel counted. The Freedom Riders are more family than some blood relative who wasn't there when we were freezing in a car. But slowly, David proved himself. He came to Katie's school play. He ate at the bakery twice a week, always friendly, never pushy. He made a donation to the Morrison Family Crisis Relief Fund. He showed up consistently, patiently waiting for trust to build. In July, on what would have been their father's birthday, Rachel and Katie invited David to join them at the cemetery. They stood at the grave together, and David cried openly. "I'm so sorry, Frank," he said to the headstone. "I'm sorry I let pride keep us apart. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you were sick. I'm sorry I wasn't there for your girls. But I'm here now. I'm going to take care of them. I promise." Rachel put a hand on her uncle's shoulder, and something in her softened. He was genuine. He was trying. Maybe it was time to let him in. "Yeah, you can." Bear pushed the money toward her. "You came over here and asked for help. That takes guts. So take the help. But I don't even know you. I can't pay you back. Don't want you to pay me back." His gray eyes held hers steadily. "I want you to take your sister and get somewhere warm. Get some food in your bellies. And then tomorrow we're going to figure out the rest." One of the other bikers, a younger guy with red hair, stepped forward. "Your car done?" Rachel nodded, not trusting her voice. "I'll call Jimmy's Towing. They owe us a favor. We'll get it to a shop and see what's wrong with it." Another biker, this one with wrench on his vest, spoke up. "Bring it to my place. I'll take a look. If it can be fixed, we'll fix it." Rachel's vision went blurry with tears. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. People like this didn't exist. Strangers didn't care about other strangers. The world didn't work this way. Bear put the money in her hand and closed her fingers around it. His hand was warm and rough and gentle all at once. "Go get your sister out of that car," he said quietly. "There's a diner 2 blocks west called Jenny's Place. You walk in there and tell Jenny that Bear sent you. Tell her to feed you both and put it on my tab. Tell her to feed you as much as you want." "I don't understand," Rachel choked out. "Why are you doing this?" Bear's expression shifted again, that flash of old pain crossing his features. "Because somebody needed to. And because I've been where you are, more or less. Long time ago, but I remember. You don't forget what it feels like to have nothing. But you don't even know if I'm telling the truth. I could be lying. I could be scamming you. Are you? No. Then that's all I need to know." He turned to one of his friends. "Spike, get Jimmy on the phone. Tell him we need a tow to Wrench shop, and we need it now." Everything happened fast after that. The biker named Spike made the call. Wrench wrote down the address of his shop. Another biker, this one with Road Dog on his vest, walked over to Rachel's car and tapped on the window. Katie jumped, but he smiled at her and made a gesture for her to roll it down. "Hey there, kiddo," he said through the crack Katie nervously opened. "We're going to get you and your sister taken care of, okay? You're safe now." Rachel made it to the car just as Katie got out, confusion and hope and fear all mixed on her young face. "Rachel, what's happening?" "I don't know," Rachel admitted, pulling her sister close. "But I think maybe something good." The tow truck arrived within 15 minutes. Bear talked to the driver while Wrench explained to Rachel where his shop was located. The other bikers hovered nearby, not threatening, just present. Like they were standing guard. Like they were making sure the Morrison sisters were okay. When the car was loaded onto the truck, Bear walked over to where Rachel and Katie stood huddled together. "You two head to Jenny's now," he said. "Get warm. Get fed. I'm going to make a few calls, and then I'll meet you there in about an hour. We're going to get you sorted out." "I don't know how to thank you," Rachel said, and she meant it. Thank you seemed like such a small phrase for what was happening. Bear's rough face softened into something almost like a smile. "You just did. Now go on. Your sister looks half frozen." They walked 2 blocks west, just like he said, to a diner with a red and white awning and a sign that read Jenny's Place, open since 1987. The warmth hit Rachel like a wall when they walked through the door. The smell of coffee and bacon and home fries made her knees go weak. A woman in her 50s with gray-streaked blonde hair and kind eyes looked up from behind the counter. "Help you girls." "Bear sent us," Rachel said, the words feeling surreal in her mouth. "He said to tell you to feed us and put it on his tab." Jenny's expression transformed. She came around the counter fast and guided them to a booth in the back. "Oh, honey. You two sit right down." Bear called ahead. "You're going to get whatever you want, as much as you want, and you're not going to worry about a single thing." "Understood." Katie started crying then, quiet tears streaming down her pale face. Jenny grabbed napkins and sat down next to her, rubbing her back like a mother would. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're okay now. Let's get some hot chocolate in you first thing, and then we'll get you fed proper." Rachel sank into the booth across from them, the money still clutched in her fist, her mind reeling. An hour ago she'd been standing in a freezing parking lot with $3 and no options. Now she sat in a warm diner with $200, a promise of help, and a group of bikers who had treated her with more kindness than anyone had in months. "We're having a family dinner tonight," Rachel said. "At our apartment. 6 o'clock. You should come." David's face lit up. "I'd love that. Thank you." That dinner was the first of many. David became a regular presence in their lives, not replacing their father, but honoring his memory by being there for his daughters. He helped Katie with college applications. He attended Rachel's speaking events. He volunteered with the Freedom Riders. "You girls are remarkable," David told them one evening. "What you've built from tragedy, it's extraordinary. Frank would be so proud." "We learned from him," Rachel said. "Everything good about us, we learned from Dad. How to be kind. How to ask for help. How to believe in people. That was all him." August brought the Freedom Riders' annual charity ride, bigger than ever. Over 1,000 motorcycles participated, riding through Oregon to raise money for families in crisis. The event raised over $500,000, the largest amount in the organization's history. Rachel rode in the lead support vehicle alongside Bear and Beth. At each stop, she spoke briefly about her journey, about the importance of community care, about paying kindness forward. The crowds grew at each location, people wanting to hear from the woman who'd turned asking for spare change into a national movement. At the final stop, a young woman approached Rachel nervously. She was maybe 17, carrying a backpack, looking scared and desperate. Rachel recognized that look immediately. "I need help," the girl said quietly. "I have nowhere to go. I heard you speak, and I thought maybe, could you help me?" Rachel took the girl's hand and led her to Linda. "This is Sarah. She needs help. Let's get her started." As Linda began the intake process, Rachel watched the familiar dance of community care unfold. Questions asked gently. Resources explained. Hope offered freely. The same process that had saved her, now saving someone else. The circle turning endlessly, powered by people who'd been helped and now helped others. That evening, at the celebration dinner, Bear made an announcement. The Freedom Riders have been offered a significant grant. $5 million over 5 years to expand our work nationally. We'd be able to establish chapters in all 50 states, provide comprehensive training, create a national emergency fund for families in crisis. It's the biggest opportunity we've ever had. The room erupted in applause. Rachel felt tears streaming down her face. $5 million. Thousands of families helped. A true national network of community care. Everything they'd been working toward, becoming real. "This is because of you," Bear said, looking at Rachel. "Your story, your work, your willingness to share your experience. You opened doors we couldn't have opened alone. This grant, it's a direct result of the attention you brought to our mission." Rachel stood, overwhelmed. "It's not because of me. It's because of all of us. Every person in this room who decided to care. Every volunteer who gives their time. Every donor who gives their money. Every family who accepts help and then helps others. That's what makes this work. That's what's creating change." She looked around the room at faces she knew and loved. Bear and Beth, who'd saved her life. Linda, who'd taught her about paying it forward. Caroline, who'd trained her in baking. Mike, Chris, George, Martha, Patricia, Jamie, Maria, Jennifer and her kids, Marcus and his son, Sophie, Emma, all the people who'd been part of her journey, who'd shown her what community really meant. I asked for spare change, Rachel said. Bear gave me everything. Not just money or housing or a job, though those things were crucial. He gave me family, purpose, a reason to keep going. That's what this organization does. That's what this movement is about. Giving people reasons to keep going, and then watching them become reasons others keep going too. The applause was deafening. People stood, cheering, crying, celebrating. Rachel caught Katie's eye across the room. Her sister was beaming with pride, and Rachel felt a surge of gratitude. They'd survived. More than that, they'd thrived. They'd taken their pain and created purpose. They'd turned their tragedy into triumph. After the dinner, Rachel walked outside for air. The August evening was warm, the sky painted with sunset colors. She thought about how far she'd come. Not just in circumstances but in spirit. She wasn't that desperate, terrified girl anymore. She was strong, confident, capable of helping others the way she'd been helped. David found her there. Quite an evening, he said. Quite a life, Rachel corrected. I keep thinking about what Dad used to say. That asking for help is brave. He was so right about that. If I hadn't been brave for 5 seconds in that parking lot, none of this would exist. Your father was wise, David said. I wish I'd appreciated that before it was too late to tell him. You can tell us, Katie said, joining them. We're his legacy. When you honor us, you honor him. David hugged both girls, and they stood together watching the sunset. A family reunited, scarred by loss but healed by love. Connected not just by blood but by shared values, by commitment to helping others, by the belief that community could save lives. That night, lying in bed, Rachel scrolled through her phone. Messages from people across the country sharing how the Freedom Riders model was changing their communities. Photos of families helped, crisis averted, hope restored. Stories of people inspired by Rachel's journey to start their own journeys of helping others. She stopped on one message from a woman in Texas. I was about to give up. I was living in my car with my 2 kids, and I saw your documentary. I found the Freedom Riders chapter in my city. They helped us. We have an apartment now. My kids are back in school. I start a new job Monday. Thank you for showing me it's okay to ask for help. You saved my life without even knowing me. Rachel replied, You saved your own life by being brave enough to ask. I just showed you it was possible. Now you'll show someone else. That's how this works. That's how we change the world. She thought about the chain of kindness that had started with Bear seeing her desperation and deciding to care. How that one act had rippled outward, creating waves that had touched thousands of lives. How her willingness to share her story had inspired others to seek help, to offer help, to believe that community could work this way. It wasn't about one person being a hero. It was about everyone deciding to be heroic in small ways. To see each other. To care. To help when help was needed. To receive when receiving was necessary. To pay forward when paying forward became possible. That was the real magic of the Freedom Riders. Not the money or the resources, though those mattered, but the culture of care they'd created. The belief that people were worth saving. The commitment to seeing each other's humanity even in the darkest moments. Rachel plugged in her phone and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she'd wake up and do it all again. Run her bakeries. Mentor new families. Serve on the governor's task force. Continue building the movement that had started with one desperate question in a parking lot. But tonight, she'd rest. Content in the knowledge that she'd turned her worst moment into her best work. That she'd asked for spare change and received a mission. That she was living proof that rock bottom didn't have to be the end of the story. It could be the beginning. September brought cooler air and the 3-year anniversary of that life-changing night. Rachel stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her apartment, getting ready for the day, and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Not because she looked so different, though she did look healthier, happier, more confident, but because the fear was gone from her eyes. 3 years ago, she'd worn fear like a second skin. Fear of hunger, of cold, of being invisible, of having no options. Now she wore purpose instead. The transformation was complete. And yet, in many ways, it felt like she was still just beginning. Katie came out of her bedroom in her Portland State sweatshirt. She was a college freshman now, living at home to save money but thriving in her classes. Her dream of becoming a social worker was on track, and she'd already started an internship with a crisis prevention program. "Big day today," Katie said, pouring coffee. "Are you nervous?" Rachel was presenting the expansion plan for the Freedom Riders to a group of national philanthropists who could fund the next 10 years of growth. $5 million was substantial, but Linda had crunched the numbers. To truly create a national network that could help families in all 50 states, they'd need $30 million over the next decade. Terrified, Rachel admitted. But the good kind of terrified. The kind that means you're about to do something important. They drove together to the downtown hotel where the presentation would take place. The conference room held 40 people when Rachel and Linda arrived. Billionaires, foundation directors, non-profit leaders. People who controlled resources that could change thousands of lives. Linda presented first, walking through the data. Success rates, cost analyses, scalability models. She proved with numbers what Rachel knew in her heart. That community-based crisis prevention worked better and cost less than traditional social services. Then it was Rachel's turn. She stood at the front of the room and told her story. Not the sanitized version she sometimes gave at conferences, but the raw truth. The desperation. The shame of asking for help. The terror of that moment in the parking lot when she thought she and Katie might not survive. "I asked a stranger for spare change," Rachel said. "I expected maybe $10. Maybe nothing. I got $200, a meal, a motel room, and an invitation into a community that would save my life. But here's what matters more than my story. It's what happened after." She clicked to the next slide showing photos. Jennifer and her kids in their apartment. Emma at her college graduation. Marcus at his restaurant. Nick and Stephanie with their baby. Hundreds of faces, all people who'd been helped by the Freedom Riders. Every person in these photos was desperate once. Every single one thought they were out of options. But a community decided to care. And not just care for a day or week, but care long enough for these people to get stable. Long enough for them to heal. Long enough for them to become helpers themselves. She clicked again. Photos of those same people now volunteering, mentoring new families, donating to the fund. This is the circle we've created. People receive help, get stable, and then help others. It's sustainable. It's replicable. And it works. The final slide was simple. Just text. Imagine this model in every city in America. Imagine no one falling through the cracks because their community caught them first. Imagine a country where asking for help wasn't shameful but brave. Where receiving help wasn't embarrassing but expected. Where helping others wasn't charity but culture. That's what we're building. That's what your investment would create. The room was silent when she finished. Then a man in the front row, someone Rachel recognized as the head of a major foundation, started clapping. Others joined. Within seconds, the entire room was on their feet, applauding not just Rachel but the vision she'd laid out. After the presentation, 12 people approached with commitments. $10 million pledged on the spot. More promised after board approvals. By the end of the day, Linda had secured $23 million in funding commitments. "We did it," Linda said, her hands shaking as she tallied the numbers. "We actually did it. This is enough to fund national expansion for the next decade." Rachel felt dizzy with success. $23 million. Hundreds of chapters across America. Thousands of families helped every year. A true national movement built on the simple principle that people should take care of each other. That evening, the Freedom Riders threw an impromptu celebration at the clubhouse. Word had spread fast about the funding. Everyone wanted to celebrate what this meant for the future of the organization. Bear pulled Rachel aside during the party. "You know what this means, right? You're going to be the face of a national organization. You're going to be traveling, speaking, training. Your life is about to get even busier." "I know," Rachel said. "And I'm ready. 3 years ago, I could barely manage my own life. Now I'm ready to help manage a movement." "You've earned it," Bear said. Everything you've built, everything you've become. Melissa would have loved you, you know. She would have thought you were the coolest person ever. Rachel hugged him, this man who'd saved her life and become like a father to her. Thank you for seeing me that night. Thank you for caring when you didn't have to. Thank you for letting me, Bear replied. For trusting a scary-looking biker in a parking lot. For giving me a chance to honor my daughter's memory in a way that healed me. We saved each other, Rachel. That's the truth of it. In October, Rachel opened the third and fourth bakery locations. Both were in neighborhoods that needed economic development and employment opportunities. Both hired people getting second chances. The model was working. Good food, good mission, good business. Katie was thriving at Portland State. She'd joined 3 clubs, made dozens of friends, and was being courted by professors who saw her potential. They want me to consider graduate school eventually, Katie told Rachel. Maybe get a master's in social work. Really specialize in helping teenagers in crisis. Do it, Rachel encouraged. You're brilliant at connecting with kids. You'd be an amazing therapist or counselor. Uncle David had fully integrated into their lives. He came to Sunday dinners, attended Katie's college events, helped at the bakeries when they were short-staffed. He'd even joined the Freedom Riders as an associate member, volunteering with the crisis prevention program. This feels like family, David said one Sunday evening. Real family. Not the distant relative kind, but the chosen family kind. Thank you for letting me in. You earned your way in, Rachel said. By showing up consistently. By proving you cared. That's all family is, really. People who show up. In November, Rachel was invited to speak at the White House, a national conference on poverty solutions, and she was representing grassroots community models. She stood in a room with cabinet secretaries and nonprofit leaders and told the same story she'd been telling for 3 years. But this time, policymakers were listening. This time, federal funding might follow. We need to shift from reactive to proactive, Rachel told the audience. Stop waiting for people to hit rock bottom before we help them. Catch them before they fall. It's more humane, more effective, and more cost-efficient. The Freedom Riders model proves it works. After the conference, a White House aide approached her. The president wants to meet you. Can you stay an extra day? Rachel met the president in the Oval Office the next afternoon. They talked for 30 minutes about community care, about scaling successful models, about changing how America thought about poverty. The president promised federal support for expansion, matching grants that would double the funding Rachel had already secured. You're changing the conversation, the president said. From blame to compassion. From individual failure to systemic support. That's exactly what this country needs right now. Flying home, Rachel thought about how surreal her life had become. 3 years ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was meeting presidents and influencing national policy. But she never forgot where she came from. That kept her grounded, kept her focused on the mission instead of the recognition. December brought the holidays and a decision Rachel had been contemplating for months. The Morrison Family Crisis Relief Fund had grown substantial enough to need full-time leadership. Linda was managing it alongside her work with the Freedom Riders, but it deserved dedicated attention. I want to run it full-time, Rachel told Linda during a board meeting. I'll still be involved with the bakeries, but as an owner, not day-to-day manager. I want to focus on the fund and the national network expansion. Are you sure? Linda asked. The bakeries are your business, your dream. They were my dream, Rachel corrected. Now my dream is bigger. I want to help build a system where no one falls through the cracks the way Katie and I almost did. The bakeries will be fine without me managing them daily. But the fund needs someone who really understands what it's like to need help. That's me. The transition happened over the next 2 months. Rachel trained managers for each bakery location. She stepped back from daily operations but remained involved in strategic planning and expansion decisions. And she threw herself into running the Crisis Relief Fund with the same passion she'd brought to baking. By February, the fund was helping 50 families a month across Oregon and Washington. By March, they'd expanded into California and Idaho. The model was working. Early intervention, comprehensive support, empowerment to pay forward. Families were being saved before they reached desperation. Katie finished her first year of college with a 4.0 GPA and a job offer to work full-time with a crisis prevention program over the summer. "I want to do intake interviews," she told Rachel. "I want to be the first person scared families talk to. I want to show them someone cares." "You're going to be incredible at it," Rachel said, certain in her bones that Katie would change lives the way they'd both been changed. In April, the Freedom Riders National Network held its first annual conference. Representatives from all 250 chapters came to Portland for 3 days of training, storytelling, and strategic planning. Rachel gave the keynote address, standing before 1,000 people who were all working toward the same mission. "We're not just helping individuals," Rachel told them. "We're changing culture. We're proving that community care works. That people want to help each other if given the structure and resources to do so. Every family you help, every life you change, you're creating ripples that spread far beyond that one person. You're showing others it's possible. You're building the world we all want to live in." The conference energized everyone. New chapters formed. Existing chapters shared best practices. Friendships were forged between people doing this work in different cities. The movement was becoming a true national community, connected by shared values and mission. In May, something beautiful happened. Jennifer, who'd been helped by the Freedom Riders 4 years ago, opened her own nonprofit. It focused specifically on single mothers facing homelessness, providing housing and job training and childcare support. She'd taken what she'd learned from her own rescue and created an organization to help others in similar situations. "You inspired this," Jennifer told Rachel at the grand opening. "Watching you turn your pain into purpose, it showed me I could do the same. My trauma doesn't have to define me. It can fuel me to help others." Rachel cried at those words. This was it. This was the goal. Not just to help people but to empower them to become helpers. The circle multiplying, expanding, creating more circles. Kindness breeding more kindness. Emma, who'd been helped 3 years ago, was graduating from Portland State alongside Katie. She'd gotten her teaching degree and accepted a job at a school in a low-income neighborhood. "I want to be the teacher who sees the kids others overlook," Emma said. "The kids dealing with homelessness or hunger or family crisis. I want to be for them what the Freedom Riders were for me." Marcus had opened a second restaurant and was hiring exclusively people with employment barriers. Criminal records, addiction recovery, homelessness. He gave chances to people society had written off. "Someone gave me a chance," he said simply. "Now I give chances. That's how this works." Story after story like this. People helped, stabilized, and now helping others. The exponential growth of compassion. That was the real success of the Freedom Riders model. Not the immediate rescue, though that mattered, but the long-term culture shift it created. People learning to help each other and teaching others to do the same. June brought Rachel's 24th birthday and a surprise party at Second Chance's Bakery. Over 200 people showed up. Freedom Riders, bakery employees, families helped over the years, national network members who'd flown in. The diversity of the crowd showed how far the movement had spread. Bay and Beth presented her with a gift. A framed photo of that gas station where they'd first met. Rachel hadn't seen it in years, hadn't driven past it purposely. Looking at it now brought tears to her eyes. "This is where it all started," Beth said. "One desperate girl. One willing helper. One moment of courage meeting one moment of compassion. Everything we built came from that intersection." "I want to do something with this location," Rachel said suddenly. "Buy it. Turn it into something meaningful. A resource center maybe. A place where people in crisis can come for immediate help. We could call it the starting point." "I love that idea," Linda said. "A physical location representing where your journey began and where others' journeys can begin too." Over the next months, they made it happen. The gas station owner was retiring and happy to sell. The Freedom Riders bought the property. Volunteers renovated it. By September, the Starting Point Resource Center opened. It offered immediate crisis assistance, intake for the crisis prevention program, connection to housing resources, job placement help. Everything someone at rock bottom might need, all in one place. The grand opening drew media attention from across the country. This was the gas station from Rachel's story, now transformed into a beacon of hope. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The place where she'd asked for spare change was now a place where hundreds would ask for help and receive it. Rachel cut the ribbon alongside Bear, Katie, and Linda. 3 years ago, I stood in that parking lot thinking my life was over, Rachel said to the gathered crowd. Today, I stand here knowing that rock bottom can be a foundation. That the worst moment can become a starting point for something beautiful. That's what this center represents. New beginnings. Second chances. The belief that it's never too late to ask for help and never too early to offer it. Katie spoke next, her voice steady and strong. My sister saved my life by being brave enough to ask a stranger for help. The Freedom Riders saved both our lives by being generous enough to give it. Now we get to save others. That's the circle. That's the mission. That's what this place will do for thousands of people in the years to come. The starting point became the model for resource centers the Freedom Riders opened in other cities. Physical locations where crisis met compassion. Where asking for help was normalized. Where community care was tangible and immediate. By the end of the year, 20 cities had starting point locations. By the end of the next year, it would be 50. In November, on the 4th anniversary of that parking lot encounter, Rachel took Katie back to the cemetery to visit their father's grave. They'd brought flowers and stories of everything they'd built. "Dad, we did it," Rachel said to the headstone. "We survived. We thrived. We're helping others survive and thrive too. Everything you taught us about kindness and courage and community, we're living it every day. I hope you're proud." Katie added her own words. "I'm going to be a social worker, Dad. Just like you always said I should be because I'm good with people." Rachel's changing the whole country's approach to poverty. "We took the worst thing that ever happened to us and turned it into the best work we could do. That's because of you. Because of how you raised us. Thank you." They stood in silence for a few minutes, remembering the man who'd taught them everything important. Who'd shown them that asking for help was brave. That accepting kindness was wise. That community mattered more than independence. His wisdom had saved them even after he was gone. Walking back to the car, Rachel said, "Do you ever think about how different things would be if I hadn't asked Bear for help that night? If I'd been too proud or too scared?" "All the time," Katie admitted. "We'd probably be dead. Or scattered in foster care. Or living such hard lives we'd never have had the chance to do any of this." One moment of courage, Rachel mused. That's all it took. 5 seconds of being brave enough to approach a stranger and ask. Everything came from that. "That's what you tell people now," Katie said. "In all your speeches. That courage doesn't have to be big or dramatic. Sometimes it's just asking for help when you need it. Being willing to be vulnerable. That's what saves people." They drove to the clubhouse, where a small anniversary dinner was planned. Just the core Freedom Riders family and a few of the families who'd been helped earliest. Rachel wanted to keep this one intimate, a reminder of where they'd started before the movement grew so large. Bear raised a glass for a toast. 4 years ago, my life changed. I met 2 girls who reminded me why I do this work. Who showed me that helping others really does heal the helper. Rachel and Katie, you've become family to all of us. But more than that, you've become leaders of a movement that's changing how America thinks about community care. I'm proud of you both. Frank would be proud. And I'm grateful every day that you were brave enough to ask for help and that I was there to give it." Rachel raised her own glass. To the Freedom Riders. To community over isolation. To compassion over judgment. To the belief that we're all responsible for each other. Thank you for showing me what family really means. Thank you for giving me a purpose worth living for. They ate and laughed and told stories late into the night. Stories of rescues and recoveries. Stories of families saved and lives rebuilt. Stories of the exponential growth of kindness that happened when people decided to care for each other. Later, driving home with Katie, Rachel felt a profound sense of peace. She'd done it. She'd taken the absolute worst moment of her life and transformed it into something that mattered. She'd asked for spare change and received a mission that would define the rest of her life. "What are you thinking about?" Katie asked. "How grateful I am. For Bear seeing us. For the Freedom Riders caring. For every person who helped us when we needed it. And for the chance to help others now. That's the real gift. Not surviving, but getting to use our survival to help others survive too. We're going to keep doing this forever, aren't we? Katie said with a smile. Helping people. Building community. Spreading this model everywhere we can. Forever, Rachel agreed. Until every city has a Freedom Riders chapter. Until every community knows how to catch people before they fall. Until asking for help is seen as brave instead of shameful. Until no one feels as desperate and alone as we felt that night. That's the goal. That's the mission. That's how we honor Dad and Bear and everyone who helped us. They pulled up to their apartment building. Home. Their home. The one they'd worked for and earned and filled with love and safety. A far cry from that freezing car in a parking lot 4 years ago. Inside, Rachel stood at her window looking out at Portland's night skyline. She thought about the hungry girl who'd asked a biker for spare change. About the community that had rallied around her. About the movement that had grown from one moment of desperation meeting one moment of compassion. She thought about all the people out there right now, facing their own rock bottoms. And she thought about all the Freedom Riders chapters, all the starting point locations, all the community members who'd learned to see and care and help. An army of compassion, growing every day, catching people before they fell or lifting them up after they'd fallen. That hungry girl in the parking lot, she'd become someone who fed others. Literally, through her bakeries. But also metaphorically, through the hope and help she now provided. She'd asked for spare change and received a fortune. And now she was paying that fortune forward, multiplied and magnified, to everyone who needed it. The circle was complete. And yet it was also just beginning. Because with every family helped, the circle grew larger. With every person empowered to help others, the movement spread wider. There was no end to it. Only continuation, expansion, the endless turning of kindness breeding more kindness. Rachel pulled out her phone and sent a text to Bear. Thank you for starting my journey 4 years ago. For seeing a desperate stranger and deciding to care. Everything good in my life came from that moment. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure others have the same chance I did. His response came quickly. You're already doing it. You're already changing the world. I just opened the door. You walk through it and then open doors for thousands of others. That's all any of us can do. Open doors. And walk through them. And hold them open for the people coming after us. You're doing it perfectly. Rachel set down her phone and looked out at the city one more time. Somewhere out there, someone was desperate tonight. Somewhere, someone was at rock bottom, wondering if anyone cared, if anyone would help, if there was any reason to keep going. She hoped they'd find a Freedom Riders chapter. Find a starting point location. Find a person like Bear who'd look at a stranger and decide to care. Find a community that would catch them before they completely fell apart. And if they didn't find it tonight, she'd work harder tomorrow to make sure it was there. To build more chapters, more resources, more connections. To create a country where no one stayed desperate for long because their community wouldn't allow it. That was her mission now. Her purpose. The reason she woke up every morning. She'd been saved by community. Now she'd spend her life building communities that saved others. The hungry girl who asked for spare change had become a woman who gave fortunes away. And in doing so, she'd discovered the truth that mattered most. Giving is receiving. Helping heals. Community saves. Love multiplies. And it all started with one brave question in a parking lot on a cold November night. Everything that came after, the rescue, the recovery, the purpose, the movement, all of it grew from that single seed of courage. From being willing to be vulnerable. From asking for help when help was needed. Rachel had asked for spare change. She'd received a life worth living. And now she'd make sure that everyone who asked would receive the same. That was the promise. That was the mission. That was the long ride home from desperation to purpose. From isolation to community. From asking to giving. And the ride continued, endless and beautiful, carrying more people home every single day.